Shortest intro ever, and we're both here right off the bat. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Hang Up. It's Wednesday night. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Jimmy Snow, running the show. Nowhere to go.
He's
true. A little slow.
Both of those are true. That was a very good poem and only apt.
I don't know how the audio is for you. It seems like it's a little quieter than it was a minute ago, but I don't know nothing. Hey, so it's Wednesday. It's the Hang Up. This is, you guys are here for my weekly therapy session, and it's great. We appreciate everybody tuning in. There's a lot of stuff we'll have to talk about with regard to the Line Network and everything else. This is a call-in show, and I find it really funny. There's someone who may call in. I don't know yet. But on the off chance that they do call in, this could be a kind of amusing because I posted, I'm going to do a debate on Saturday. The debate that I'm doing on Saturday is against Daniel Hakikatu, who's a Muslim apologist. Probably one of the Muslim apologists with the most vile positions and personality as well, who seems to have a number of weird delusions about atheists wanting to live in pods and things like that. When I posted the debate, I posted the sensationalized kind of clicky thing because I was asked to promote it by the people who are actually running the debate. I don't run modern day debates. I'm there a lot, but I don't run modern day debates. I don't run their events. I don't have any say in any of it. I'm just somebody who shows up and actually does debates. And so it was really funny to me today when somebody tweeted at me saying, when I announced this debate, he said, AKA, I like doing debates that make me look smart and theists dumb rather than engaging in interesting conversations about the intersection of faith and science. And I'm like, here's someone who clearly doesn't know who they're talking to. I don't arrange the debates. I take whatever debates are offered to me by the people who are arranging debates. I don't look up my opponents or do any research on them prior to the debates. I focus on the topic. I've been for 20 years now, almost. I've been doing live call-in shows, taking debates from anybody and everybody who calls in. There's plenty of things that I don't know enough about, don't know anything about, but I've engaged in lots of interesting conversations about the intersection of faith and science. And I've debated some incredibly stupid apologists. However, when this person pushed back, rather than correcting or apologizing, they said they went out and looked at the videos. They thought I did a decent job against Peterson, although his inability to slow down and listen was a big distraction. But from what they can tell overall, from the handful of things that they looked at this afternoon, I pick easy targets that make for great clickbait, except that I don't benefit from clickbait because for 18 plus years, I did this for the atheist community of Austin, where I made no money and got no money. I never made a penny. Matter of fact, spent thousands of my own money to do this. This is about a genuine mission on my part. And now, yes, I get paid for work I do at the Line, but we haven't started the debate stuff yet. We're just still taking live calls and everything else. And when it comes to modern day debates, I've never turned down an opponent because I thought they might make me look dumb. I've turned down opponents that I thought would be a complete waste of everyone's time. I've taken opponents that I didn't know, which turned out to be a waste of everyone's time. But they said that they might call in today. And if they did, they wanted to talk about Carl Friston's free energy principle and Michael Levin's work on collective intelligence to know if being is eternal and wisdom necessitates growth, how a godlike entity could create a world any other way than the one created by the evolutionary process of nature being marred by tooth and claw. And I'll say straight up, I haven't spent enough time looking at that, nor do I give a shit. What I care about is theism true? This interesting conversation about the intersection of faith and science is something that maybe you should have with someone who's advocating for the science or talking about that. With some level of expertise there. What I want to know is, if you have theistic beliefs, is there good evidentiary warrant to believe them? That's step one. Outside of that, there are plenty of things that are really interesting and worth discussing that would bore the audience to tears and that I don't know enough about. So if he happens to call in, if John, you're thinking about calling in, the only thing I want to know is, are you ready to retract your accusation that I intentionally pick debates that make me look smart and theists look dumb? Because let me tell you, it's incredibly trivial to make theists look dumb, especially Muslim apologists by and large. Now, some of them are fine, and some of them I'm great with. But it's really strange to have done a call-in show for nearly 20 years where anybody could call in, and I post one link to one debate where just last week I debated a different Muslim that didn't make me look stupid. Matter of fact, I don't know when I've actually been made to look stupid. But if you think you're going to call in to talk about something that I'm some area of science or theoretical science that I'm not particularly knowledgeable about to make me look stupid, not going to work. I'm just going to say, I don't know. Can you make your case?
Also, if you were really motivated to just make theists look stupid, why go through all of the effort for a call-in show? Just do response videos. They're very popular. They're you know, anyone who can do it half decent is probably guaranteed at least 10,000 views. You've already got a history, so any response video you would do would be instant views and money. We've talked about it before. It's just not your style. It's not the thing you do. That isn't to say that everyone who does response videos is doing low-hanging fruit softball stuff. In fact, some of the best creators, like Paulogia, is I've said many times, I think one of the best counter apologetics channels ever to exist. He does response videos, and his are incredible.
That would be the way to go. I mean, if this was, hey, I want to make myself look smart and theists look dumb. Trust me, I could just grab every garbage preacher out there, take a clip from what they said, like we mentioned with the dude that was saying that autism is of the devil, and then instead of doing a live call-in show about it and trying to get people to defend it, where you have a bi-directional conversation, I could just put up, oh wow, I'm talking about several people who I actively despise. I could just take that clip and point and laugh, and get thousands, hundreds of thousands of views. Just by pointing and laughing and mocking. It's bizarre to me. I mean, I get debating Daniel is something that I've been shit talking for weeks now, because he wouldn't agree to the topic. And then he wants this 3-hour debate divided into 3 different, pieces and all of it. He's trying to control absolutely everything. And it's just awful. So I just posted that on Saturday, I'll be debating someone who is in favor of marrying babies. And that's my clickbait title, because that's who he is, but that's not what the debate is.
Yeah. I don't know. The number of, look, we're here. I love when they think that we do any of that on the call-in shows. We get comments like that shit all the time. We go late constantly because maybe in the first half of the show, only atheists call in, and then suddenly we get an influx of theist callers, and we go, all right, well, fuck dinner, fuck sleeping, fuck whatever. We'll take every goddamn theist who calls in, to the point that some people have started trying to cheat the system. So there's that too. But
so there's been a lot of stuff going on. I'm gonna give the last little bit of news here, and then Jimmy can talk about what's going on with the line and the upcoming shows for the week. But we had house guest yesterday, and we cut a new clutch of 5 ball python eggs. We got what appears to be 2 pastels, 2 pewters, and 1 sterling, which is a super pastel cinnamon. So it's kind of like a super pastel version of the pewter. They look great. They're still 4 of them are still in the eggs. They're coming out. We've been doing a lot of cleanup and work around here. I got 2 new snakes that arrived today that are in quarantine. I've been doing prep work for, not really prep work for Saturday's debate, but prep work for the trip to do Saturday's debate. And just been completely distracted. And so I'm happy to talk about almost anything or everything. And we'll be taking calls. As always, theists are going to have priority in particular. But I did 0 prep work. It would literally be a lie for me to say that I have a hang up where I have a prepared hang up, but I have thoughts. And Jimmy's done the legwork, which is why we both came in together. So welcome to Jimmy Snow's take on the hang up. It's all you.
I thought about when people were in the live chat, I thought about coming in with a fake account, because there were people in the live chat basically expressing that their mild disappointment, I hope it was mild, that It's me again, co-hosting with you. And I almost wanted to come in and with a fake account and be like, hey guys, this is a secret. I think they're going to announce it tonight, and start a conspiracy that you're actually retiring and I'm taking your spot on the Hang Up, just to see how mad that would make so many people, including myself.
Oh my God.
I would be the most mad in that scenario. Anyway, the thought crossed my mind. I hope we had a Theus caller queuing up, and I hope that they call back if the call was lost, or that might be actually the person who is already back in the screening room. It is. Okay, good. So the main thing that's on my mind right now, the thing that I'm hung up on, is the incredible hypocrisy, surprise, surprise, once again, of Kevin McCarthy, who will do absolutely anything to keep his speakership, including saying back a couple of years ago that an impeachment inquiry should not be opened without a vote, in response to the fact that Nancy Pelosi was going to direct an impeachment inquiry, and then is now hiding behind the Nancy changed the precedent, which is something you can hide behind, except for that a couple of weeks ago, he said the exact same thing, with a sort of righteous indignation of, we the better governing Republicans would be doing this with the right way, with a vote. However, has now been essentially blackmailed by the likes of Matt Gaetz and Matt Gaetz's cronies, one of which was ejected from a musical this week for causing a ruckus and singing along loudly, and then having to be escorted out in a very, do you know who I am fashion? Are you already aware of this?
I don't.
Yeah, Lauren Boebert decided being in Congress means you get to sing along to the songs at a musical.
I went after her today twice and said, wish it was easy to remove her from Congress as it was to remove her from that show.
Yeah, that would be nice. So they've now opened an impeachment inquiry on President Biden, despite the fact that even people on their side have said there hasn't been any concrete evidence. And so, as opposed to the last time where there was this phone call, there were these whistleblowers, this time there is, we would like to go find a reason. We would like the impeachment inquiry powers to go see if there's a reason to impeach him, as opposed to, which by the way is a tremendous waste of taxpayer money, as opposed to actually we have solid evidence. In fact, they don't like to even use the word evidence. They just like to say, we've heard credible accusations. And then obviously they get everybody built up. Oh, we're going to be having a testimony today from one of Hunter Biden's associates, and we're expecting him to come in, point his finger at President Biden and say, and that was the man behind the whole thing. Then the guy comes in and goes, no, there were times where we were in the same vicinity, but Joe actually wasn't a part of any of the business dealings. And yet, you have people like Senator Tuberville, who had some time ago basically said on Fox News, like, hey, I've been subpoenaing all this stuff, bank records, literally thousands of pages. And luckily, the administration has been giving all that stuff and complying with all the subpoenas and all the requests. Now coming out and saying, well, if they would just cooperate, if they would have just cooperated, we wouldn't be here. Meanwhile, they had already cooperated to the maximum, sort of in a very similar way to the birth certificate stuff in the past, where even when it came out, then it was, well, this is obviously a fake. So that's the thing I'm hung up on right now, is the less than surprising right-wing hypocrisy and the opening of an impeachment based on absolutely nothing, because it is a political move, which is essentially also an admission of McCarthy's when he spoke about how they were able to get Hillary's favorability down by announcing investigations and doing the Benghazi stuff in the past as well. So this is a actually politically motivated impeachment that they're not even pretending it isn't. And it is a way of opening the box more that I don't know how that box gets closed in the future. Is this just going to be every time there's a new president, expect them to be impeached no matter what? Yeah. Who knows?
It's, I remember, well, it's kind of an arms race. It's kind of a political arms race where, okay, you did this, now we're going to do this. You held the Supreme Court hostage, now we're going to hold the Supreme Court hostage, except that only one side is really amping it up. because the Dems, they're either too stupid to actually accomplish anything a good chunk of the time, or too honest to play the dirty pool that the Republicans are evidently frequently wanting to play. And so impeachment has become, oh, you impeached us, we're going to impeach you, we'll find a reason. It doesn't matter if there's any there. It doesn't matter if there's any substance there. The only thing that seems to matter is, hey, this is good press and it plays well to our base. And that's true whether you're Republican or Democrat. We're sitting here looking at Trump's arraignments and indictments and charges, and okay, it's amusing a little bit. It's terrifying in the sense that I don't know what's actually going to happen. But I also know what ideally should happen. And once we get to the point where every election season is also impeachment season, and it's not just, impeaching Biden. The Wisconsin Supreme Court's trying to do this too. I just talked about how the Wisconsin Supreme Court got the Democratic majority for the first time in ages, and they reduced the power of their Republican elected Chief Justice, and she's now claiming that this is the equivalent of a coup. And so the most interesting thing about it to me is the Republicans are mad that they've lost the power in their Supreme Court in Wisconsin, and they don't want to just impeach the newly elected justice that they have a problem with, because if they do that, then the Democratic governor will be able to appoint that judge's replacement. Instead, they're going to use the tactic, because they disagree with them in their policies, of not impeaching the judge, but they're going to try to get the election thrown out so that then they get to have a special election rather than following. The rules are there, the rules are in place, and they're like, let's see if we can not do this the normative way, but we're going to do this in a slightly different way and work our way or do a workaround to get what we want, because we don't want, somehow or another, we got beat in an honest election. We no longer care about the will of the people. This is now a power struggle. And so it's either going to be impeachments, but if the governor is not on our side, then we're not going to impeach. We're going to throw out the election results. It's happening. I don't know. I was going to say left and right, but it's the right that's doing this to counter election results. What happened is Democrats got out and voted. Wisconsin Supreme Court justices are elected a judge, and now they're trying to overthrow the will of the people because the majority has shifted. Yeah,
it's a power thing. And then Trump has the audacity to make jokes at his rallies about so now the way it's going to work, if somebody runs against me, I'll just say to my attorney general, indict him, as though he didn't try that, as though there wasn't an impeachment over him trying to get Ukraine to announce investigations, as though there wasn't problems with former attorney generals who wouldn't do the things that he wanted to do regarding the Biden stuff, and as though the Hunter Biden investigation didn't actually begin under him. So it's a very rich thing they're doing. Where it's the utter lack of self-awareness is what I find to be ultimately the most frustrating. But in happy news, I don't know if anybody's been watching this case in Pennsylvania this morning. They successfully captured Daniel Cavalcante, the murderer who had escaped and had been basically hiding in the forests of Pennsylvania after having years ago successfully done that in Brazil. Escaped prison and hid away in the Brazilian I don't know if it was the jungle or just the forest there, but sort of a survivalist. Anyway, he was caught this morning, and that was at least some good news. I've been watching that case obsessively.
I unfortunately haven't had to. Wow. I haven't had the opportunity to watch any news for the last, I don't know. I mean, I caught news this morning when I first got up because that's the first thing I do, but I wasn't able to dig into a lot of stuff. We've got a bunch of callers, but before we start going on to callers, and unlike last week, when we were like, hey, this is going to be a short show, and then we just went all the way till 9:30. Today we're going to keep this appropriate, unless there's just some great calls that want to have good discussion. So if you have political views that may or may not disagree with us, or with thoughts about that within the realm of the United States, and as always, theists are going to get priority. So if you have arguments for the existence of your God, don't get me wrong. The individual, I'll tell you what happened. I'm going to tell you what happened. The individual who was thinking about calling in did another couple of tweets, and one of them went into a lengthy diatribe, essentially claiming that I tend to keep things in the realm of the philosophical, and I don't go into science stuff, and then I claim victory in moral debates over God. And I'm like, and then he went on to give his view about what Jesus said and how Jesus would have agreed with me, but I was 2,000 years too late or whatever else. I don't even know. Let me be clear. The reason I don't spend a lot of time on things like the free energy principle and things like that is that a theoretical Bayesian analysis of scientific findings doesn't get us anywhere when someone is advocating for a God that exists outside of space and time. We have no way to investigate outside of space and time. We have no reason to think that outside of space and time even exist or something that is sensible. The reason we deal with philosophical arguments for the existence of God is because you don't have scientific arguments for the existence of God, because science is about knowledge. Science is about coming up with testable models that are verifiable and falsifiable. And for the same reason that mathematics doesn't point to God. There's no variable for God. And in science does not have the ability to investigate currently the supernatural. Now, if you're advocating for a God that's not supernatural, cool, neat, cool story. But I don't know what justification anybody could have for saying that the science of how minds work points to a God. That would still be a God of the gaps, because it's a gap in our actual scientific knowledge. So yes, I do tend to keep it in the philosophical, because that's where it needs to be. That's where you talk about the establishment of a default position, a burden of proof, and an epistemology that is sufficient to warrant accepting that a God exists. If you think that you have dabbled around into quantum this and that, or free energy this or that, or theoretical this or that, and have a scientific justification for God, you're just wrong. Like, not, hey, call in, we'd love to hear it. Don't worry, go ahead, call in, I'm sure we'd love to hear it. You are demonstrably wrong. There is no Nobel Prize for discovering God, and there's not going to be. So don't pretend that you're doing hard science, even if you are better versed in aspects of science than I am, than Jimmy is, than Neil deGrasse Tyson is. There are things you may know that Neil doesn't know. Doesn't change the fact Neil's a fucking atheist. As are the overwhelming majority of scientific elite. Not that that matters. I don't want to make an argumentum from the popularity of elite scientists, but anyway, we lost another call. You ready to take this call? Oh, you have announcements for the shows.
Yeah, okay. For real, callers, we'll get to you in just another moment. So quick, two things. One, Matt, if you want to see news that will outrage you, watch the people who are talking a lot about the alien hearings in Mexico and the pictures they showed of these aliens that look like they're made of cake. They look so obviously fake and stupid, and yet people are like, and then they're also listening to testimony of a scientist who in the past has been exposed for faking alien shit. That's another thing that was happening this week that Eric in chat.
I saw the picture.
Yeah. It looks like cake.
It looks like paper mache to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And then announcements. Tomorrow will be the Transatlantic Call-In Show will be an hour later than usual. It'll start at 3 p.m. Central, and that will feature Katy Montgomerie and Aron Ra. And then Matt and I will be back on Sunday for the Sunday show. Monday will be, I want to say, Shannon Q and will be Aron Ra. And I don't think Aron is booked a guest yet, but we'll figure that out here soon. And then Tuesday, Dying Out Loud with Dave Warnock. We're still getting caught up on booking stuff and waiting on responses actually right now from people. And then next Wednesday, Matt will not be here. It'll be me twice, on both sides of the screen. So no, I'm just kidding. It'll be Matt and probably someone else.
I was like, Did I book something and I forgot?
No, I was just trying to annoy people.
Because I think Arden is booking my guest for next week as well. But
cool.
Yeah, I'm so rough. I haven't shaved. I haven't shaved my head. I haven't shaved my face. I'm like, fuck it. Let's do a show. Let's have some Wednesday shows, some goodiness.
I fully plan to wear this is just the t-shirt I was lounging around, and the jacket was already on this chair. I'm in my new set because I thought I would show it off a little bit. Yeah. Anyway, we're ready.
Awesome. Well, we have Marcus from Oregon calling in, pronouns are he, him, who's a theist, that has a question about a malicious God. So, Marcus, welcome to the Hang Up. You're on with Jimmy and Matt.
Hey, Mark.
Thank you for having me.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on the line. I wanted to ask about what you were talking about just before taking the call. I kind of noticed that there's a lack of funding for theists in the sciences to pursue investigations in terms of finding God. I know there were some things in the past, like looking for vigor, that fell short, but I thought you might have something to say about that.
Well, I don't know that I understand what the thing is. So first of all, there's organizations like the Templeton Foundation that have tried to do scientific studies on things like prayer. Unfortunately for them, it keeps failing to demonstrate any efficacy at all. I don't know where you've looked to determine that there's not much funding or no funding for theists trying to demonstrate God with science. But in order to get funding, you would need to show up with a proposal that shows why you think this would be a good use of money and what results you're likely to get. And since science doesn't have the ability to investigate the supernatural, at most it could only confirm what manifests in the natural world. And since no supernatural claim has ever demonstrated any efficacy or any manifestation in any detectable way, you have no way to draw a causal connection between any observed phenomenon and a supernatural cause. So it's up to the theist to come up with a proposed model that they'd like to investigate and demonstrate that it's worth spending money on.
Yeah, Marcus, the interesting thing about if you're talking about from secular organizations or just science-based organizations that often provide funding, for most funding toward the sciences is going to expand existing concepts and existing foundations. So if you're trying to say, why aren't we funding the look for God? Upon what foundation that has already been established can you make an actually coherent hypothesis with foundations to point to of why we need to test this and everything? And if you aren't going to follow that, if you're saying that there needs to be a special exception for theists, then it would be up to theists to create that fund. So if somebody wants to come out there and go, I have a hypothesis of you can find God among here, then it would be up to a theist organization. Just like if I am an ice cream enthusiast and I want to claim that ice cream can cure cancer, I'm going to have to go appeal to ice cream enthusiasts to help me do that research. I wouldn't go to science with an absurd non-foundational claim and a hypothesis that I wouldn't be able to present any coherence, that there would be a payoff to that funding.
Can you think of a way, though? I mean, I still want to talk about the topic that you originally had listed with the call screener, because I'm interested in this concept of, what kind of hypotheticals could we come up with about a potentially malicious God. But can you think of a way that science could test for a God or look for a God?
I tend to think kind of from a top-down perspective, because God is often painted as a very powerful creature. So when it comes to things like prayer, I would be more interested in studying group prayer than individual prayer, and having specific guidelines on what the prayer should look like to eliminate as many variables as possible. That would be an example, but I guess we could go in another direction with something.
Well,
like
are you familiar with the Templeton? Are you familiar with the Templeton Foundation study on intercessory prayer?
I am, and I think it did not have any meaningful results.
Oh, I thought well, all right. It had some results. What would you do to test prayer that would be an improvement over what the Templeton Foundation did?
Yeah.
Let me think about. I mean, I've thought about this. For example, I'd like to test some like psychic phenomena, like if we could figure out if a group of people were thinking about us, kind of testing like a sixth sense, if they were, reasonably nearby but far enough away that we could say that there was no transfer of sound, something along those lines.
Do you not realize that not only have governments investigated claims like that, but so have, the James Randi Educational Foundation had $1 million prize for anybody who could demonstrate any such phenomenon. What is it you're looking? What do you think that they've missed? Well, and the other thing is not only what is it that there's missed, but why do you think there's any likelihood of finding something like that? Like, I don't have any good reason to think that someone communicating psychically or detecting things psychically is even possible. What's the demonstration of possibility?
People, they kind of have, they just develop this opinion, and I feel like it wouldn't cost a lot to test it out. Basically, would be just
no. Hang on. I was asking specifically what reason we have to think that it's true, and you're like, people have this opinion. It wouldn't cost a lot to test it out. Isn't if it's impossible, if there's no God and there's no prayer that could possibly be answered, then isn't it a waste of every single penny we put on that? Isn't every penny we put towards that better spent trying to cure diabetes or ALS?
Well, I think that would be a better use of those funds, yes.
That's why the funds don't go there.
Why did you start by proposing, though, that we should be looking for God, and then you pointed to a type of experiment that would not confirm a God or even imply a God? If it turns out a person thinking about somebody could be felt even on the other side of the world, you would have established zero gods. So I don't even understand the relevance of this. Just some sort of supernatural appearing power?
Yeah, absolutely. I try to think in baby steps when it comes to, making a large discovery like that.
Okay. By the way, they've already done experiments like that, and people have lied a lot about what the outcomes of those experiments were. When the types of experiments are already happening and they don't go your way, or like you said, they didn't have I don't remember what word you used, but significant results, like in the prayer study, you then need to convince other people whose money you would be putting on the line that you have a better foundation, better worth funding. That's the simple thing of it. And I mean, you've already said it would be better to use the money for cancer, and that's what we're using it for. So good enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your response. About a malicious God, I feel like people tend to believe that God is a kindly creature, and I've never really had that inclination myself to believe that. So I just kind of wonder if people might be looking in the wrong place, and I think that being atheist, you might have a more developed opinion on this. So I'm curious to pick your minds.
Well, when you say generally people tend to be thinking of and looking for a good God, or maybe they're looking in the wrong place. But I would argue that both philosophically and to whatever extent we're able to look for a God at all, I don't look for a good God and fail to find one. I look for any God and fail to find them. And so the fact that, you have a different view of God than a good number of people do. And I'm not sure. I think it listed you as a theist. So I think you're convinced that there is a God, right?
Yeah, more than not. More so than
okay.
not.
And so you're convinced that there is a God. Is the God that you're convinced of malicious?
And yes, I'd say so.
Okay. So you've
More
become
than
convinced that there's a malicious God. Do you have a good? I mean, I guess I shouldn't ask for a good reason. I'll take any reason. What makes you think there's a malicious God?
If we were to say that there is a God, most creatures are driven by survival, and it just doesn't make sense to me that God would be similar to humans, or better than humans, or anything like that. I think that survival makes many creatures more powerful than us in a variety of ways. And if there were some creature that were able to hide from us and have tremendous power, I don't think there's any good reason to say this creature would be a compassionate God
Well,
or
yeah, sure.
divine being.
I'm not. So I'm not suggesting that if there was a God, I don't know what its character would be, malicious or not. But you believe that there is a malicious God, and so now you have a positive belief that I'm wanting to know what the evidence is. What makes you think there's a God at all, let alone one that's malicious?
I mean, it really could just be my mind playing tricks on me, if I'm being completely honest. And I think it's really down to like raw personal experiences. And I know it's kind of a cop out, but I'd have to really
Yeah, I
dig
mean,
into my
I
experiences.
don't get me wrong. I appreciate the fact that you're saying, "Hey, it could just be my mind playing tricks on me," but that means that you think your mind has detected something. And so, what I'm wanting to know is, what makes you think your mind has detected something?
Uh, There are just so many circumstances in my daily life that I run into that just feel, like something's playing dirty tricks on me. You know, um,
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
like losing
Like,
your
give
car
me
keys.
an example. I keep asking for something concrete, and what I get is, well, it could be my mind playing tricks on me, or there's just so many things. What do you think is something that you find as an example of something in your life that you think is best explained by a malicious God?
I'll have conversations with family members and classmates about something like a schedule, and we all think that something's going to happen on Thursday, and then it turns out to be Tuesday, and we miss it. And there things like that happen all the time. And like I said, I could just be getting old, but I've had this issue my whole life, and I know other people have it too. So
Wait,
I
I
don't
want to
even
make.
get it.
I'm
feels
desperately
like
trying to
it's
understand that.
impossible.
Hang on. I'm trying to understand this, Marcus. You're saying you'll make plans with family members for Thursday, and then people will think it's Tuesday and they miss it.
No, everyone. Okay, so there's a scheduled meeting on Tuesday, and
Okay.
I do truth checking with other people, and we all agree it's on Thursday, but it happens to be on Tuesday. We all miss it, and it almost feels like the world is just reorganizing itself to screw us up. It happens all the time. What do you call it? Like toast always lands peanut butter side down. You know what I mean?
No.
So, so no, that doesn't always happen. Um, and if we found that buttered toast was more likely to fall buttered side down, I don't know why anybody would think there's not just a purely physical justification for that. Just like if a die consistently rolls one number, we tend to think that it's gimmicked in some way, not that there's a supernatural agent manipulating that die. And so if you make plans for Tuesday with family members, and then in verifying it, everybody verifies Thursday, then why is a God the best explanation for that instead of people are just wrong?
I Because it just seems so crazy. Like if you're looking in your couch for your keys and you've turned it upside down and taken off the cushions 30 times, and other people have done it, and then you find your keys in the couch, it just seems like
Wait, Marcus, in this scenario, what do you propose happens? The keys on the 30th time, instead of just being tucked away or falling out of a pocket that you didn't realize they were caught up in, the metal being caught on something, that 30th time where it falls out has teleported from somewhere else? What is it you're proposing this supernatural entity or power has done for you in finding those keys that 30th time?
I mean, if the God's malicious, why let you ever find your keys?
Marcus, you still there? You're just silent.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I wish I could answer it. I had one other question, if it's okay. I feel like you guys.
No, it's not. No, it's not okay, because we haven't gotten answers to this one, and I'm not just going to move on to another topic.
Yeah, 2 questions. Can you answer either of them?
Okay, I'm sorry. So the first question, I think, was, what am I proposing? And I said, yeah, I would propose something like, teleportation or restructuring of the world or something really extreme like that.
All right, Marcus, today, my sister had to go and get medical care because she had this pain in her hip that she hadn't ever had before. And she went and found out that she likely has a thing called piriformis syndrome. My brother Jason and I both have the same. It causes sciatica. We both have the same syndrome. And we had never, ever talked about it until 2 days ago. And then 2 days later, even though he and I have had this for years, both of us, 2 days later, she finds out she probably has it too. What do you think has happened there? A coincidence or magic?
That sounds like a coincidence to me.
How is that more coincidental or less coincidental than your proposal about multiple people getting the wrong day of a schedule? My brother's 40. I'm 33. We've both had this condition for over 10 years. The day 2 days after the day we talk about it, our sister is suddenly talking about it too. That's way more coincidental than multiple people getting the wrong, which that part wasn't even clear to me that that's what was happening. But I guess, how do you determine when something is a coincidence, when something is the keys falling out of the pocket you didn't realize with this metal thing, with metal things to catch on? By the way, do you actually is this an actual example or a made up example? Is there a time you looked 30 times?
I think it's a pretty good example.
No. I'm asking, was there a time you looked 30 times in the same spot and on the 30th time found the thing? Or is this a sort of hypothetical?
No, this is an actual thing that's happened.
30. You're standing by 30. It wasn't 4 or 5 times, right? It was 30 times. That was the number you used.
That was the number I used. Would I stand by that number? I mean, more than one person were looking, and we looked in the same place.
Okay, but 13. How about 50? Was 10 more? Is 10 closer to how many times you probably actually checked that exact spot, or 30?
I would say closer to 20, if I'm being honest.
So I just want to point out something you've done, because you mentioned your mind might be playing tricks on you. When it came time to share a detail of something that has happened to you, you instantly hyperbolized without thinking about it. You just did. You went with a number that is hyperbolized. I also agree your mind is playing tricks on you. I doubt the number 20, to tell you the truth at this point, but maybe it was that. And even if it was, I wouldn't suddenly go, well, 20 confirmed. Now this sounds supernatural. I think it's called confirmation bias. I think you are finding what you want to find. And I have no idea how you tell the difference between a magical key teleportation and this thing that happened between my 2 other siblings, which one's magical and which one's coincidental.
Yeah, I mean, you're making a really good point. I feel like something like this may have been caught on camera if it were to actually occur. I mean, again, the proposal is a restructuring of the world somehow, and that's why it feels like something that even a camera wouldn't catch, because but sometimes it just feels like karma, I guess. Maybe it's
But how many confirmed do you have confirmed examples of the universe restructuring? As in, we've measured, we've seen it, we proved it that that's happened.
You're making a good point. I wouldn't know how to measure that.
Right. But there are confirmed videos out there of people looking for something like the glasses on their head. And it seems to me that if you were looking forever for your glasses that were up on your head, and then suddenly you realized they were on your head after hours and maybe even talking to people and they didn't notice, that you would think it materialized there. And yet if a camera was there, it might show it was there all along. So we have examples of things like that do exist. So we do have confirmed example of people just either not seeing the thing they're looking for, like me every time I go to the fridge. We have tons of confirmed examples of shit like that happening, and none of this restructuring of the universe. So when you're sitting and going, I'm going to base a belief on what I feel like is most likely, how are you coming up with the teleporting keys example?
Well, I mean, like I said, I mean, you've done a good job of kind of taking the argument away from me.
Sure, fair enough.
I had this other major concern, and I was hoping to be very brief. I could ask one more question.
It's up to you, Matt. I mean, it's your show, obviously.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. And I mean this with all respect. To what extent do you think that hard breaking from theism to atheism might be dangerous? Or are there any specific deficits to an atheist upbringing? I guess that's the crux of the question.
I actually think that's a good question.
I don't know what you mean by hard breaking. If you're asking me, do I think there's a risk of no longer believing in a God? Sure, there are risks. You could be wrong. You could lose friends. You could face consequences from a world that is biased towards people that believe. But belief isn't a choice, and you are either convinced that something is true or you're not. So this isn't an act. Becoming an atheist is not an act of volition. There is no, oh, okay, I've been believing in God. You know what? I'm done with that. I'm going to be an atheist now. That's not the way it works. You are either convinced or you're not, and you don't have any control over what you're convinced of. The only thing you can do is care more about the truth and the methods by which we attempt to confirm the truth than you do about whether or not something is comfortable, or whether you're going to opt for an easier answer that you don't have to justify. Because I mean, like you have all these views about a world basically rewriting itself on a regular basis, like some sort of Mandela effect thing, which by the way is bullshit, where there's a prankster God. What you're asking is, what's the risk? Well, it doesn't matter what the risk is. It doesn't matter what the risk is.
But I think that people, they approach this question from the context of whether or not it's wrong to teach people to be more atheistic. And when I talk about hard breaking, I mean like in one day going from being an atheist to an atheist, and really more.
It always happens in one day. It always some moment in time you are convinced a God exists, and at some other moment in time you are not convinced. That happens instantaneously, even though you don't recognize it. You may not recognize when it actually happened. But when you're talking about teaching people to be atheists, I don't know what you're talking about. When I have conversations, I'm teaching skepticism as a foundational principle to apply epistemology to best understand and have an accurate model of claims. I'm teaching humanism as a quasi-religious system of ethics and morals, where whether there's a God or not, we're stuck defending these. I don't teach someone to be an atheist. I argue against theistic claims and other claims that are poor arguments, that are without evidentiary foundation. If someone becomes an atheist, then it's like saying, is there a problem with teaching people that Highlander 2 is a terrible movie and having them become convinced that it would be better to ignore that movie and only focus on Highlander 1. How can that possibly be a bad thing?
Marcus, I suspect I can actually ask you a question that's going to expose what your flawed thinking is here. And so I'm going to try it here. This is the question. Okay. What is the atheist position on homosexuality?
I don't think there is one.
Okay, you actually got it right. But I worry that you in the way that you are talking about teaching people to be more atheistic, that there is some list of things that you think, I don't even know how to teach a person to specifically be atheistic. I know how to teach people how to be skeptical, and I believe that if you teach a person good skepticism, that they are going to come to the conclusion of atheism. But I don't even give an example of how would you teach a person to be atheistic?
I would say just by debunking some ludicrous claims about their specific beliefs.
But that's not an atheistic thing necessarily. While there can be crossover, if I'm debunking creationism, you could say that that's an anti-creationism or a pro-science teaching. But you could conceive of an atheist who somehow believes in a young Earth, maybe not creationism itself, because I don't know how you'd believe in creationism without a God. But
I phrased this wrong, because you mentioned humanism, and the idea is that these theologies on the better side would have a package of ideas like apologism and pacifism and forgiveness, and the only thing really keeping a person to those in some situations would be their belief itself, and losing
false
to snap into a.
Even psychopaths have to live in societies and follow society's rules. It is not only those things that lock a person in. Even if you come up with an extreme example of a person who isn't locked in emotionally, who doesn't have a correctly developed brain that experiences empathy and the things that are the foundations of a thing like humanism, because humanism so easily is derived from those things. It is not, what you just said is not true.
But you would say the risk is basically then not so significant that it's even worth considering not teaching people these things like skepticism.
Did you get the question?
No, because I'm still hung up on something you said a while ago, where you're suggesting that there's some problem with debunking religion. If something isn't true and can't demonstrate that it is true, how could there ever be a problem with debunking it? And how could anyone object to debunking it? But what's worse, if something is unfalsifiable, we're not debunking it. We're just pointing out that it hasn't established its burden of proof. What could possibly be wrong about saying this claim has not met its burden of proof, if that's the case? How can the truth be a problem?
I think that you'd have to look at someone who feels that like authoritarianism is a better way of governing.
No, Marcus, no. How can the truth be a problem? If somebody prefers authoritarianism, that's not a sound argument for the existence of a God. That's a utilitarian argument for convincing people of belief. But I don't give a fuck about the utility. I care about what's true. And if you seem to be suggesting that there's a problem with pointing to the truth, and I want to know what it is.
I have to think about it. Maybe I could call back.
Good enough.
Okay.
It's a good question, though, Matt. I appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks.
And Jimmy,
I understand. Sure. Thanks, Marcus.
Yeah, sure.
This is something where, and I'm not going to beat up on Marcus before or after the fact. There's a lot of frustration. Some people have bought into the notion that theism is good or needed, or, even like I was talking with my debate opponent from the other day, who has concerns about, hey, don't we need to maybe reform Islam and Christianity and all these others for the people who won't give up a God belief, but who really need to be better than their religion?
Yeah.
And my answer is no. We need to get them free from whatever thing is gripping them and forcing them to believe something that is irrational and non-demonstrable, unfalsifiable, whatever it is. The problem isn't they believe a religion that's awful. The problem is they believe there's a God, and that's being used to convince them of something that's awful. If they stop believing in this God thing, now what's going to convince them to keep doing something awful? Don't get me wrong. There are ways to do it. But those are the things you attack. You attack authoritarian views. You attack top-down views. You attack do this because I said so things. But
yeah, we've got lots of theists waiting.
We do.
It's pretty exciting.
Let's do it. We have David in Serbia as a theist, pronouns he, him, has a question about heaven. So, David, welcome. You're on the line with Matt, or you're on the hang up on the line with Matt and Jimmy.
Hello. Hello. Nice to meet you.
Hey, David.
Hello. I know I'm theist, but perhaps the universe as a world of multitudes arose from a primordial unity. We had a consciousness. It is possible that God decided to become the universe and change his antique constitution. But however,
how do you know that's possible?
I think maybe it's philosophical opinion.
Well, if you just say this is possible, I don't believe you. How do you show it? How do you show that it's possible?
Universe is different. Maybe there is some logic. I not explain that easy. That's very hard and deep philosophy. But
okay, let's do this, David. I'm happy to talk about, like, the call screener had you listed as something about why heaven is not boring. I'm happy to talk about things like that. But
Yes.
when you start saying when you start saying that it's possible for God to do something, I'm always going to ask you, how do you know that's possible? And if you're not ready to back that up, just don't even say it.
No, I just I like idea.
Okay,
idea.
I don't. We're here to have people present the idea that they think is true and defend that. This is not the show where you call in and just tell us something that you like as an idea, because I like as an idea the concept that I'm still talking. I like as an idea the notion that I would live to be 700 years old, but I have no reason to think that's true. So it's a waste of time to talk about it for now.
I noticed that atheists don't understand really much that according to standard Christian belief, heaven can be boring because in the presence of the Holy Spirit, we constantly feel bliss as if we are eternally drugged.
Hey, David, what religion did Matt used to be?
My religion.
What?
I'm theist.
No. What religion was Matt before?
Before.
Before I was an atheist, before I was an atheist, I was part of a religion. What was it?
Oh, but I like to speak about heaven.
No. Do you know the answer to the question? I'm not asking for no reason.
No.
Okay, because you just stated Matt was a Christian, I was a Mormon, which it's at least Christian light, it's Christian fanfic. You just stated that atheists don't understand these Christian principles and they don't understand things like interacting with the Holy Spirit. Both of us have a deep understanding of Christian principles and what it's like to think we are interacting with the Holy Spirit. So now you can present your case, but I was simply responding to the stupid and condescending thing that you said.
There is a different opinion in different denomination, maybe.
Right, and yours is the right one. So now present us with the evidence.
No, I just, many atheists said heaven is boring, what we do, but...
David, I'm muting you for a second. I'm going to take you off mute because I'd like for you to get to your point. But listen very carefully. I get it. There's going to be some language barrier issues here. I don't care what most atheists say because I don't think you've talked to most atheists, so I think you're exaggerating a sample size. I don't care what most atheists say. I don't care what some atheists say. There's only 2 atheists whose views I give a fuck about during this show, and that's me. Well, 3. Me and Jimmy, and if there's an atheist caller. So your job as the caller here is to make your case for whatever point you wanted to make, that heaven is boring or heaven is not boring. I don't need you to tell me what you think most atheists believe, because what you think most atheists believe doesn't matter. If you think I believe something, you could say that, or you could ask me about it. But I need you to focus and talk about the actual subject that you called in to talk about without talking about what you think most atheists think. That will never have any weight with me at all, because a good chunk of atheists are stupid.
Well,
go ahead.
I'm online. Okay. I'm just saying heaven is like when you are constantly on drugs, but in a healthy way. That's it.
Constantly on drugs, but in a healthy way. I don't know. Okay, so you think heaven is like being on good, healthy drugs all the time?
Yes.
Like what kind of drug? Like insulin or marijuana or?
Maybe marijuana.
Sure. How do you? Okay. Now that you've told me what you think heaven is like, why do you think heaven is like that?
Most logical for me. That is most logical.
No, that's not the way logic works. If you say it's most logical for me, that's not an argument. It's not evidence. It's not anything. You might as well just be saying, I think heaven's really cool.
Is explanation of that.
No.
Yeah.
What? No, it's not an explanation. You're saying that heaven is like being on good drugs that are healthy. Why do you believe that?
Theologically explanation.
Why do you think that heaven is like being on good drugs all the time?
I just said, I think because the like theologically explanation most.
You are not giving me an explanation, and you are not making sense. What fact? Where did you learn? Where did you learn this idea that heaven is like being on drugs? And what evidence can you present that you're correct?
One priest say that, and
some priest told you that heaven is like being on good drugs all the time.
Yeah.
Why are you convinced that the priest is correct?
Because I'm a Christian, and that has a sense for me,
David, are you aware of a priest
explanation?
David, are you aware of a priest ever being wrong?
Yeah, of course.
Are you aware of a priest ever being wrong about something within Christianity?
Yeah.
Cool. So you don't believe him because he's a priest. There's some other reason that you believe him. What's that reason?
I most like this opinion. I like it.
Okay. So your whole no. Stop.
Logical.
You are saying that you believe the priest because he said something that you like, and so you're going to believe it.
Yes, this for me logical.
Okay. Do you care whether or not your beliefs are true?
Well, truth not exist.
Truth doesn't exist. Okay. Well,
no.
Call me back when you start caring about truth. Goodbye.
I think that even if we were getting an honest Christian, I think the language barrier might be too much to overcome in this one.
It might be. And that's why one of the reasons I want to push. But when you get to the point where you're like, hey, do you care whether or not your beliefs are true? And you get anything that is either a no, or there is no truth, or truth is subjective, or anything like it is pointless for me to continue.
Yeah, totally agree. But just look at the existing lines. Do you want me to cap or leave lines open for additional theists on top of the ones we have? I'm good either way.
Yeah. If another theist calls in, I'm fine with that, but let's get to these.
Cool.
I want to take this call just because Andrew's been on hold for a very long time, and is not going to get a very good answer at all. So, Andrew in Ukraine, him. I apologize that we made you wait an hour and 20 minutes to ask your question, and that you're not going to get a very good answer. But ask your question.
Hello again. I'm used to this at this point. That's okay. I was just wondering, what do you expect from the upcoming debate with David?
I'm not going to tell you.
What do you think is going to happen?
I'm not going to tell you.
Okay. That kind of intrigues me.
Yeah. I'm not going to make any other statements about what I'm expecting to happen on Saturday night at this debate. Because if I were to say it on the show, then either some of it is likely to happen because somebody may work to make it happen, or
the prophecy.
Yeah. Or people would work to not make it happen. Instead, what I may do is, before we start the event, I may record a video and post it on some YouTube channel. I haven't decided. I might post a video on some YouTube channel and I keep it isolated until after the video, so that then I can release it and say what my predictions were. But it doesn't really matter. This is, everybody already knows I generally have less respect for Muslim apologists than for almost any others. And I have zero respect for this individual's ideas. I find him disgusting and repugnant start to finish, and I'm embarrassed that I'm spending any time actually engaging him in debate, and my goal is to make sure that nobody else ever has to. What happens on Saturday, I have no idea yet.
So is it fair to say that your goal is pretty much just show what his beliefs are to everybody, or like what is
everybody already knows what his beliefs are?
Yeah,
everybody already. Yeah.
All right.
I hope that I put a nail in a coffin, figuratively.
I see. Okay. I also I was wondering, you were talking about that there's going to be security at this event, and
yes.
I'm a bit confused as to like why. What do you think might happen?
Well, at one previous event, somebody, not a Muslim, but somebody decided to try to rush the stage with their camera for attention, and the moderator had to get up and prevent them from getting to me. But at this point, I don't have any confidence that there won't be people who, on behalf of their religion, would avoid violence if it came to that.
This is crazy, especially that, it's happening in the United States, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, it's crazy that you have to be concerned about that. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
If I could, I wanted to ask another question. Maybe I will get an answer to this one this time. I was just wondering, and again, maybe it's silly, I don't know. But So basically, you define atheism as not being convinced, with the proposition that the God exists.
That's one definition that is.
Is the one that you accept.
I accept several.
Yeah, but it's the one that you give when you are being asked.
I think you mean the one he identifies with when he uses the term.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
fine I'm fine identifying multiple usages and definitions. I just say that the minimal position is if you're convinced a God exists, you're a theist, and if you're not convinced, you're an atheist.
Okay, sure, but in this case, is there a place for a term agnostic, or is it completely redundant at this point?
Well, for that minimal position on I'm not convinced that a God exists, agnostic is irrelevant because you're not making a belief claim, so you can't possibly have a knowledge claim. For a strong atheist position where you're asserting that you believe there are no gods, then whether or not you claim to know becomes relevant. Not important, but relevant.
Relevant in which sense?
As a clarifier, because knowledge is a subset of belief, and knowledge, while it has definitions like justified true belief, knowledge is also colloquially used as a measure of confidence in a belief. Essentially, if somebody says, "Oh, I know this is true," what they're saying is, "I really, 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 really believe it."
Okay. Would that mean that some evidence is involved, at least from the perspective of the person who's claiming that?
Not necessarily. From the perspective of the person who's claiming it, they could have a flawed epistemology that isn't based on evidence, or that is based on flawed evidence. Which is why I don't care. Which is why I don't care about the knowledge claims related to theism and atheism. It doesn't matter. You don't wait until you have knowledge. You act in accordance with your beliefs. So even if you say, well, I believe it, but I don't know, you're still going to act in accordance with your beliefs. So knowledge becomes an irrelevant, an unimportant sort of punctuation.
Okay, so in regards with this question, basically you think that the term agnostic is mostly useless. It would be that fair to say?
Mostly useless. I generally don't find it to be very useful. So I don't know for sure that I could say mostly useless, but it's very rare that I hear anyone use the word agnostic where I think it has actually added something substantive and important. And I think there are probably times when it's more of a distraction.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I got it. Well, I guess this is it for now. I'm sure I'm going to be calling again later. So until the next time,
cool.
Thank you for answering.
See you, dude.
Bye-bye.
Yep. Thanks for waiting.
It's very interview-esque.
It is. And it's, man, there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen between now and Saturday. And it'll be interesting, but we've got theistic callers. As a reminder, this is not the only show on the Line Network. If you're not liking this one, well, that's,
understandable.
There are other shows that are much, much better. I mean, Jimmy and I are fucking awful. I don't know why anybody's ever tuned into anything we've ever done or said.
The worst.
But yeah, we literally the worst. And somebody at this network should fire both of us. But
there are people who really, really don't get how it works. There's there's the recent person that I don't know if you saw, I tagged you on Threads telling you to fire me. And then in the last couple of days, it seems somebody's hoping that Ben will lie about their interaction on the show the other night and sue me for a hostile work environment because myself and Forrest were making jokes about pubes. And when Ben was laughing, smiling, and making jokes too, this individual could see that Ben was actually repulsed and hurting. There's just fucking people are bizarre. And this all over the fact that the individual, one, doesn't like me, and two, I apparently missed their super chat, which I would have apologized for, but now go fuck yourself right in the pubes.
I can tell you, I'm definitely not going to fire Jimmy while we're both on the show together and he's producing, because he can cut off my mic and my camera. So I would only do it if, like, when Arden was producing or something like that.
Yeah.
But
that's how that would go. Yeah.
And, I just,
why so blue?
It's just not fair. Oh my gosh, why so blue? I'm blue, abadi, abada. Yeah. All right. Just as a reminder, if you don't like this show, well, to each their own. But there are better shows, much better shows here on the Line Network, and some of them don't get quite as many viewers. For example, if you tune in tomorrow at 3 p.m. instead of 2 p.m., normally it's 2 p.m., you can go. You'll be here for the Transatlantic Call-In Show, where if you have questions about trans rights, trans issues, if you have disagreements with trans rights and trans issues, if you have been called a transphobe and you're proud of it, or transphobe and you don't understand why, any of those questions, that's your opportunity to call in and talk to real live trans folks. And that phrase ends up getting us in trouble. What we clearly mean, to anyone who's not an obtuse pedant looking for something to be pissed off about, is that instead of engaging in talks with other cis people about trans people, you can actually have conversations with people who know what they're talking about, whose lives are impacted by these issues, and can speak to you from authority. It'd be like saying, I have thoughts about gay people, but I've never had a conversation with someone who's gay. Well, you could call in and talk to a real life gay person. You could call in today and talk to someone who's queer. You could call in tomorrow and talk to someone who's trans. You can call in on Monday and talk to someone who's a scientist and or a doctor. You can call in on Tuesday to talk about someone who's facing a terminal diagnosis with ALS and has been dealing with this and dying out loud for years. If you are interested in a perspective on dealing with issues like that, we definitely have you covered. And you should definitely consider tuning in and participating on Dying Out Loud on Tuesdays.
Also, if you want some things to continue to expand and the network to expand and events to happen, go to patreon.com/calltheline and become a patron with new special things, new exclusive content and stuff being added here soon. It's a fun time. There's some behind the scenes stuff already over there. Plus we do occasional Zoom calls with the hosts. There's a Discord, all that kind of stuff. So go to patreon.com/calltheline or else.
My timing on that drink was perfect. I got it right as you were finishing the last word. So, I'd say we go ahead and cap the calls right now. There are 5 people on the line on hold right now, and 4 of them are theists, and we greatly appreciate that. We're going to do everything we can to get to all of you and the one atheist who's still there, and we're going to probably take them in the order that you've been on hold. So Brandon, a theist in California, pronouns are he, him, has a question about investigating supernatural phenomenon. So welcome.
Hey, Matt, how's it going? So I was just
not too bad.
Thanks for taking my call. I like this show. I heard about you guys from my son. Kind of come from a Christian background on both sides of my family. And then there was a time in my life where I dabbled with atheism, and then it kind of made my way back to the theism side of things. And my oldest son, he's turned about the age of 18, and he's taken anthropology in college, and he's a very smart kid. And well, now he's taken his turn and dabbling in theism. And so that's how I got introduced to your show. And I appreciate all of what you guys talk about. You guys have thoughtful discussions, good faith discussions. You hold your ground, and I appreciate that. So I'm hoping to get in the ring here and see how I can do. So basically what I want to talk about is the line of demarcation about like what is science and what is not pseudoscience, and when should someone be tarred and feathered as a creationist, or when should they be allowed to speak on scientific matters, and how you go about deciding that. Like what's the gripe with James Tour or the Discovery Institute, or take your pick.
Yeah. Creationists can talk about science anytime they're actually talking about scientists, or anytime they're actually talking about science. So if there's a creationist who wants to accurately represent biology or geology, they're free to do that. When they say that creationism is science, or that the aspects of creationism that they're pointing to should be considered science, then they're wrong. And so the scientific process is, there is no single scientific method, but science is a process of trying to understand the world. And for that, we use the best tools that we have available: logical reasoning, sound epistemology, evaluation of evidence, etc. Science is a rigorous process that involves some key principles. Is the proposal testable? And that includes falsifiability. If it's not falsifiable, it's not testable. So is your hypothesis testable? Until then, it's not a real hypothesis. It's a pseudo hypothesis. And so if it's testable and falsifiable, and it has then been tested and subjected to peer review and replication, where other scientists can replicate the testing and reproduce the results, then the findings qualify as scientific findings. They are still tentative. They are still subject to revision when we get new information. But at no point is creationism is the notion that there's a being, an untestable, unfalsifiable being outside of space and time that is responsible for creating everything. That concept is not currently accessible through scientific inquiry. There's no way we can test for something outside of space-time. There's no way we can test for anything that is proposed to be supernatural. And in the entire history of the world, no proposed supernatural event or cause for an event has ever been demonstrated to be both true and supernatural. And so that's where we draw the line. The pseudoscience is when an idea, whether it's homeopathy, whether it's cupping or Reiki, whether it's a resurrection or the creation of a god, pseudoscience is when an idea has not done its due diligence to demonstrate its efficacy through good scientific practices.
Brandon, is there a scientific fact, principle, thing that you feel has been rejected by science, that you feel has met the standards of science and has been unfairly rejected?
Well, maybe not by like science in general, but I can give you a specific example. So let's say something like a proposal by a creationist guy. Maybe he thinks that like there is a God, and maybe he thinks that God created the universe, and that somehow like the physical observations that we see are going to line up with that in some way. And so his science flows, down from
his science or the science?
Well, the science that he's doing.
No. That's pursuit. Not right. Are you talking about a subjective?
What science is that person? Like, give me an example when you say the science he's doing.
Well, like, let's say that someone tries to do some math and figure out the waiting time problem with like fossil data, or that let's say they try to do some sort of calculations with like the blood cascade, because they're trying to like mathematically demonstrate some sort of constraint on the understanding of evolution that they've read in the literature. Is that pursuit pseudoscience if they're going about it in a methodical scientific way, but their ideas and their thoughts that are leading them to that pursuit maybe flow downstream from theistic ideas up the river? Does that make sense?
Well, if they're doing it's entirely possible. For example, and this may be incorrect, it may not line up perfectly. The former head of the Human Genome Project, Francis Crick, is a good scientist, but he also believes in the Trinity, and he believes that because he came across, not Francis Crick, Francis Collins, my apologies. Francis Collins believes in the Trinity because he was out for a bicycle ride and came across a waterfall that was frozen into 3 columns, and it reminded him of the Trinity, and he hit his knees and prayed. And he's convinced that there's a God, and he's convinced that Jesus is God, and that this Trinitarian view is real. But he holds those views, and it doesn't impact his ability to look at the genome and study the science accurately. So there are people who, and he thinks that God basically invented or created genetics.
Mm-hmm.
But his belief that God created genetics has no impact on the science that he's actually doing, because that doesn't change which genetic letters or which chromosomes you're working with or any of that. It has to do with some other aspect. It's like you could be the best car mechanic in the world, even if you believed that the internal combustion engine was created by magic in the 5th century by fairies. You would have a view that is untestable, that you can't demonstrate, but it wouldn't change that you could still do be a mechanic. But I think what you're talking about is if somebody has an idea about God and they're trying to use science to debunk other science, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the science that they do to show that other science is wrong, if that science is reliable, it doesn't matter whether it originated from their real or misguided view of a God. And it doesn't matter, because the science is agnostic about beliefs that don't impact that. I think what we really need is, and we kind of tried to get to this, an example of where you think a creationist is doing science on behalf of a God belief or some sort of supernatural belief that is leading him to debunk science, and that's not being accepted, I think. I mean, we may have too many factors in this now. I really like to understand what you're saying.
Well, I guess and I'm sorry, I don't mean to muddy the waters, or this just kind of came out of discussions with my son, and kind of discussing some of the things that he brought to my attention, and a lot of the disagreement came on about, like, well, who should be an accurate authority in science? I mean, if you find
no one,
like, you can take somebody like,
no person is the authority in science. There's no such thing as the authority in an authority in science.
The data is the data are the information that we point to. To say something is true because Neil deGrasse Tyson said so, that's a shortcut that we'll take on occasion, because let's be honest, if Neil deGrasse Tyson says something about astrophysics, the odds are good that he's accurately reporting the best understanding of astrophysicists. But it has nothing to do with whether or not he says it or if anybody says it. It doesn't matter if every astrophysicist on the planet all got together and said, yes, this is true, wah ha 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 ha, we all agree. If that conflicts with the actual data, then they're wrong.
Well, okay, yeah, I think I completely agree with that. There's no point of disagreement there. So, like, if you want a specific example, we could take let's take the efforts of the Discovery Institute or their science department or their intelligent design department. Do you think that categorically, like, all of that should be labeled as pseudoscientific, or do you think they're trying to do good science but it's falling short, or do you think it's something else?
They have no scientific findings that I'm aware of. What the Discovery Institute is doing, like, for example, I know one of the individuals went and got an actual PhD in geology, which all that is I'm going to do the work and report the answers they say, and now works to undermine all of the geology that he actually studied and got his degree. But maybe I'm missing something. What scientific presentation has ever come out of the Discovery Institute that supports their findings of or their ideas of an intelligent designer?
Yeah, sure. And feel free to, cream me on this, because I'm not a scientist and I haven't studied this stuff, but I do frequent their website. And so, I've seen some very interesting things brought up. I don't even think I'm smart enough to accurately relay it on this call, but they, like, for example, there was a debate between James Tour and Dave Farina, and so I was looking into some stuff about origin of life, and then I was thinking about, like, wow, it's really, like, kind of seems like it's really unknown where life came from, and that's a very interesting concept. And so it kind of opened the door to, like, reading other articles about maybe there is a God, or where did we come from, And So I am a layman and I don't have a degree. My son's taking anthropology and we argue about God all the time. So I'm kind of, I don't mean to, I'm kind of taking a soft stance, but I'm just trying to be genuine with where I'm coming from.
I'm just wondering, because I want some scientific finding from the Discovery Institute, because I'm not aware of any. I'm aware of the Discovery Institute wanting to teach the controversy. I'm aware of the Discovery Institute lying and changing when the courts ruled they couldn't teach creationism, and they changed every instance of the word creationism to they were going to change it to intelligent design, or they changed creationists to intelligent design proponents in order to get around the law. And we know that they did this because we found an intermediate or an intermediate form where they went through and cut and pasted, and it became Kerr design proponentsists. And so they left that transitional relic in there, which is how we know that they just flat out took everything they said and figured if they changed creationists to intelligent design proponents, that this would get them around the law, because they're wanting to teach creationism, but it does not qualify as science. They have a strategy. They are a conservative political group. They, to my knowledge, have not produced anything that is a proper scientific finding subjected to peer review that supports intelligent design in any significant way. It's one thing. So, for example, do you think biologists working on evolution sat down and said, we want to counter creationism, let's work towards this alternate view? Or do you think those scientists evaluated the evidence honestly, followed the proposals, and supported evolution?
I think for the most part, it was a genuine effort. I don't think there's anything like nefarious going on. I think the wife of what do you know? Do you remember that old program Cosmos?
Carl Sagan.
Carl
his wife,
Sagan. His
Andrea.
wife. Yeah, she had a controversial take on evolution. I think that wasn't accepted for a long time, and then it came around that she was actually correct, and then they actually adopted what she was saying.
And how did they find that out, Brandon? How did they find out she was correct?
Well, I think I see where you're going with this. They probably just, were honest and followed the data and looked at
did they pray about it?
No. Maybe some of them did. I don't know.
They did science. The reason they found the reason she would have been vindicated, I don't even know the specific story, but this is the point that people always, when they bring up, well, science was shown to be wrong. And then you ask them by what mechanism? Because it wasn't a church. It was science.
I argued with my son about this too, and he told me that that's actually the beautiful thing about science is science, updates itself, it corrects itself.
Yes, it's not dogma. If it is shown to be wrong, that is greeted with reward. It's a good way to make a lot of money. But and the thing that you've been talking about this whole time of like the Discovery Institute, you had mentioned things about blood platelets, you had mentioned things about dating and stuff. And I recognize what you think you're engaging with as being science, which are these fake debunks. And we see them all the time. And I think what you think is science is somebody saying something along the lines, evolution can't be true because it violates the second law of thermodynamics. Is that one you're familiar with, Brandon?
Yeah, I'm familiar with
and
that
it's a very popular one, and it's been in multiple books. And the thing that places like the Discovery Institute, the thing they want is for you to stop there and not listen to a single scientist who actually knows what the second law of thermodynamics is. Because if you say something stupid like chaos can never create order, you're an idiot. But that isn't doing science. That isn't scientists doing rejected science. That is people playing word problems with terms from science, thinking that they can basically trick their way with some limericks through and take down a system that is in direct opposition to their belief. The reason why the Discovery Institute doesn't fight science with science is because they can't. They lose every time. So they fight science with fake science term laden bullshit. And that's what you're engaging with and asking, I think, why are we rejecting the thinkers like Josh Feuerstein? Science can never.
Jimmy and I are on two completely different pages at the moment. Let me finish my thought, and then you can try and address both of them. The Discovery Institute has a strategy and a goal. The goal is to defend a creationist worldview and oppose the science of evolution. They see the science of evolution as a threat, and that is their strategy. That is their goal. Science doesn't have any goal but finding the truth. And the interesting thing is, if the Discovery Institute actually did science that disproved and showed problems with evolution, non-Discovery Institute scientists would accept that, because their goal is to accept whatever is true about the world. The Discovery Institute has an ideology, and that is what is driving them to try to prove this other view is wrong. And even if the Discovery Institute did real science, proved evolution was wrong, and all non-Discovery Institute scientists universally accepted that, that would still not in any way demonstrate the truth of their view about God at all. But they don't do that. They have not done what it takes. So despite the fact that they've got this strategy and supposedly God on their side, they've made no progress in shutting down the scientific truth from the massive, like the Discovery Institute, teeny, tiny compared to the massive group of scientists that understand and accept scientific evolution.
I appreciate that, and I definitely see where that could be the case, because as I'm sure, I think I heard on the previous call that you used to be a Christian, so I know you're familiar with the old Christians want to do things to build their faith sort of thing, so they sort of gravitate to the things that are going to reinforce their theistic views. And
in fairness, everybody wants to do that with their beliefs. To fight against confirmation bias is something you have to learn to do, and you'll never escape it completely.
I guess maybe in order to take this in a productive direction, maybe I could say something like, well, if you're struggling with doubt, but there's something appealing about theism to you, there's some theological appeal there, like, whatever it is, take your pick. God's word is the same today, forever, and always, but science is constantly changing or has to update itself. And I appreciate that solid rock of the rock of ages of the Bible. And let's say you find yourself there, and then you're also a scientist and you're familiar with all of the literature. And then you come to a position of a person like Kenneth Miller, who I'm sure you guys are familiar with from the Dover trial, where he actually argues against intelligent design often, but I believe he's a Catholic or something, maybe even like William Lane Craig, who he kind of argues as an apologist for Christianity all the time, but he definitely believes in, old earth and evolution and things like that. Do you take a hostile approach toward that belief, or do you look at that as more legitimate, or do you think that that's illogical too, or doesn't hold up, or doesn't hold water as well? What's your position on that?
Kenneth Miller was critical to the Dover trial. He's a Catholic, and he understands that intelligent design and creationism are not science and do not rise to the level of science and should not be taught in science classrooms, because what we teach in science classrooms should be the best findings of science, not religious ideology. I have no problem with Kenneth Miller's take. I have no problem with Kenneth Miller's take on the science. I would disagree with Kenneth vehemently on whether or not there's a God. But the people who take comfort in God and the Bible being the same today, yesterday, and tomorrow, while science keeps changing, have overlooked something important. All that means is religion suffers from continuing to be wrong whereas science does not suffer from that and can continue to improve and be more correct. That's the difference. A static view of the world suggests that, Bronze Era goat herders who think they got a message from God got it right, and there's no need to ever update it. Science updates because it is honest and because its only goal is to find the truth. Religion doesn't update because religion doesn't care for reliable methods of finding the truth. Religion cares about maintaining the dogma.
Brandon, were you trying to ask, though, whether or not we don't feel a need to check? I think you were trying to say there are Christians out there who are scientifically minded. They're more scientifically progressive or progressive generally. Do we give these people a pass and not challenge that and retain our judgment of their beliefs because they aren't as radical? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, kind of. Like, basically, does God rise to the level of a legitimate idea in your view, or is everybody that wants to believe in it irrational or clearly demonstrated as being wrong?
No. We're not claiming we've demonstrated that God is wrong. God is an unfalsifiable proposition. It would be a mistake to claim I've falsified it. But the bigger mistake is in believing that it's true. You don't have unless I've missed something, and which is why I've been hosting shows and having people call in to present their evidence and argument for almost 20 years. There's no good reason to believe that God is real. And if people run around saying, I believe that God is real, either they should be able to demonstrate that easily to the rest of us, or they are irrational at some point.
Is it let's say I'll play with you here a little bit. Is it a good reason to believe in God because you were born into a country and all of your neighbors believe in God as well?
Do you think that's a good reason?
One of the dumbest reasons to believe in a God.
Yeah, Brandon.
Why?
Okay, I was born in the United States, and I have a friend who was born in Iran. And because of that, we were raised to believe in two different gods. Which of us got it right? And how do you know that based on which country we were in?
Well, but that's not even what Brandon's asking, I think. Brandon's just asking if it's okay, like if it's fine to do that. Right?
Yeah, because
I'm explaining why it's not. I'm explaining why it's not fine, because there is no fucking causal connection between where you're born and whether there's a God, is there?
Well, let's say that if I may, and cut me off if this is going in the wrong direction, but let's say that you took an approach that we're just a Homo sapien and we're just like a species, and our species happen to evolve tribes and religions, and the culture that I happen to find myself in is a Christian one. So why fight against that I've evolved into?
Whether or not you fight against it isn't the question. The question is that a good reason to believe that something is true?
Well, I mean, a lot of people do believe it in this country, so why?
Do you think that a lot of people believing something is a good reason to believe that something is true?
In some cases, like if it's
No. It is a logical fallacy. It is a logical fallacy called argumentum ad populum, appeal to the popularity of an idea. The truth of an idea is not impacted in any way by the number of people who believe it, how long they've believed it, how sincerely they believe it. If you believe it is logically sound to believe that something is true because a lot of people believe it, you are demonstrably wrong. You are engaging in a logical fallacy.
Well, maybe it's not maybe it can't be demonstrated to be logically sound, but like people can live life like good enough based on good enough beliefs.
But Brandon,
I don't give a fuck about good enough. I want to know if it's true. And if it's illogical, which is my claim, my claim was if people believe in a God, either they should be able to demonstrate it or they are being illogical. And now you're just agreeing, they're being illogical, but I guess it's good enough. I don't think that's good enough. I care about what's true, don't you?
That's what I was going to ask. Is Brandon, Not just do you care whether or not something you believe is true or not? Do you believe that society gets better as it accepts more true things and less false things?
I personally do. I think I do. Yes.
So
I could be fooling myself.
Why would you defend if for a society to transition to a state of more truth would require individuals many times over to stop believing the untrue things and start believing the true things, right?
Well, yeah, but like, let's say you were born into a family that was very Christian, and the most responsible, best people in your life, were Christian, and the only atheist people you knew were the bratty teens.
Why are we making up hypotheticals? You're making up a hypothetical about a societal advantage that, what if you become like the mean teens? Okay, you shouldn't become an asshole. You should seek all of the things that are true. And being a mean atheist teenager isn't the alternative truth to Christianity.
I'm just saying, like, why should I go the way of my son or the way I did when I was younger? Like, what about
this isn't a choice, Brandon? Brandon, this isn't a choice. Atheism isn't a choice. You don't dabble in atheism. You are either convinced that a God actually exists, or you are not convinced that a God actually exists. This isn't something you have control over. You are either convinced that the claim some God exists is true, or you are not convinced. The thing that you're talking about now is stop and wait. The thing that you're talking about now is, if I was born into a family and they're predominantly Christian and everybody who I knew was good was Christian and everybody who I knew who was an atheist was awful, isn't that a good reason to believe? No, it's not a good reason to believe that it's true. It may be a good reason to go along with it. It may be a good reason to prefer one group of people over another, but it's not good reason to believe that something is true. Here's the proposition. Some God exists. If you are convinced that that proposition is true, you are a theist of some stripe, Christian or otherwise. And if you are not convinced, you're an atheist. This isn't an act of volition. There's no choice here. There's no dabbling.
Is there like periods of doubt?
Sure. Are you convinced that there's a God?
Well, I'm definitely taking the side of that right now in this interlocutor.
That's not what I asked. That's not what I asked. And I would appreciate it if you just answer the question that you're asked. Are you actually convinced? Okay.
Yes.
What convinces you that a God exists?
Well, if you want me to have a good answer to that question, then I have to say no, I guess. No, I'm not convinced. Because if by
congratulations,
definition, if I have,
you're an atheist.
Well, so would you say somebody like Jordan Peterson, who maybe thinks that Christianity is good for society, but he doesn't believe in an actual God, he's an atheist?
I don't think I've sat down and had dinner with the man and sat down with him on stage to millions of viewers now. I don't think that either you nor me have a good understanding of what Jordan Peterson thinks, nor do I give a flying fuck what that batshit lunatic thinks about a God. This is about what is reasonable to believe, what is demonstrated by evidence, and whether or not you believe it.
Well, what if I just want to suspend my mind like the Bible says and I want to accept it by faith? What if I want to be one of those lunatics?
The Bible doesn't say that.
Are you sure?
Pretty damn. Where does it say that?
Well, I thought that somewhere in the Bible it says you don't rely on your own mind or your own feelings because the heart.
It says lean not on your own understanding, but that doesn't say that you suspend your mind. I think there are plenty of Christians out there who would find it really offensive that you're suggesting that they don't and can't have a good reason. They have to suspend their brain and they just rely on faith. But your question I'll just take as rendered, which is, what if you want to do that? If you want to do that, Brandon, it's fine. You don't have to care about the truth. You don't have to have good standards of evidence. You don't have to have good reasons for your belief. If you just managed to convince yourself that I'll just throw out science and reason and logic, and I don't care if something is true, and I'll just go with what my family taught me, you are welcome to do that. But you are being irrational, and you have no good sound evidence to stand on. And I don't understand why you do that. Would you cross a street?
That's how I learned my language.
Would you cross the street, a busy highway, blindfolded?
No.
What if you didn't believe a bus was coming? If you didn't believe a bus was coming, Are you right?
No, that would be illogical to do that and to just assume that.
Why is it you care less about your eternal potential future and whether or not there's a God than you do about crossing the street? What if you heard a voice in your head that said, I am the Lord thy God, put on this blindfold and walk across the street?
Well, I guess it's really just wanting to be faithful to my father. I mean, that's irrational according to you. But what if that's how Homo sapiens are supposed to be?
What do you mean how they're supposed to be? Why is it that the truth
or how they're just observed to be, how they're supposed to?
No. I don't care how they observe to be. It doesn't matter how humans are observed to be. Humans do all kinds of irrational things, and people try desperately to please their fathers. And I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing on the whole, but I know in individual situations, it's absolutely fucking awful in some of them, and it's probably okay in others. But I care about the truth.
If you love your father.
What?
If you loved your father and,
I love my father. I love my father. I love my father. My father will forever be disappointed that I am working in the service of Satan in his mind. But me following him would be stupid and irrational because his beliefs are stupid and irrational.
Oh, that's fair.
If you're fine being stupid and irrational, go for it. But some of us care about truth.
I don't feel stupid and
wait, but Brandon, I'm worried about the implication of your question. Are you trying to find justification to suggest that you should believe because your father believed, or you've mentioned your son, that your son should give up his beliefs, his honestly found beliefs, to adopt your beliefs? And is that the type of way you love your son? Do you think, by the way, my dad is like that, has explicitly said so, essentially, that I should just pretend to believe and fake it until I make it because it's what he's passed down to me. So is that how you feel about your son or how you feel about your father?
Well, I told my son that I went through a period of doubt just like he did, and that my father.
But just answer my question. Just answer my question. Are you saying that about your father, or are you saying it about your son?
I was saying what again? I'm sorry.
Asking whether or not it's okay to believe on the basis that your father believes.
Well, I'm not sure I understand your question. I'm a little slow here, but basically, I think that my son has the right to believe whatever he wants, and everybody does.
Right, but you were asking if it's justified to believe in response to us talking about your beliefs and asking about your beliefs. It seemed like you were suggesting at first that you want to hold on to this belief because it's the belief you got from your dad. Was that what you were saying?
Yeah, essentially, I think that's in a nutshell.
And you believe your father loved you and would want that for you?
Well, yes, I do.
But so how would you feel if your son felt compelled to believe what you believe, even though he can't honestly come to it, and you knew that he was only doing it, living against what he actually believed was true because he felt he should because you believed it? You'd think that was good or bad?
That's a good question. You posed that well. I would say that's probably, on the whole, the way you framed it there, it's going to be bad because
it's also foundational for abuse. Just so you know, this is how abuse works. I'm not calling your father abusive, but this is how family abuse. It is so often. We often refer to it as patriarchal or authoritarian, where you have the one person who gets to issue the identities, and reward and punishment is sort of issued out, and that reward and punishment can be mild. It's still considered abusive, but it can be mild in the form of just approval or disapproval, sort of, or it can be more extreme where it comes in forms of physical abuse. Again, I don't know you. I'm not saying anything about your father, but I'm telling you that you're talking about systems that are ripe for abuse. And so to ask us, would it be okay to believe on that basis, would be to basically ask us if we're okay with something that is foundational for authoritarian abuse that you see expressed, especially in family units and especially in religious family units. And the more religious, the more fundamentalist religious the family is, the higher the likelihood you find those systems of abuse. So no, I'm not okay with that justification.
I got kind of an interesting take on that. Feel free to field this if you want. what if our patriarchal way of doing that contributed to the evolution of Homo sapiens themselves? Like, what if that contributed to our large
But
brain
I would,
size in our society today?
whether or not you could prove to me that the fact that we were religious stopped us from going extinct, and I would still say that doesn't mean we should be religious today. Even if you could prove that. What?
You wouldn't say that that was illogical?
Why would I assume that the religion of the past would be necessary to save us in the future? If you prove to me that in some past point we would have gone extinct, except had we not been Hindu or some religion, that would not have an implication on today.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fair. I mean, I think one could make the case that it helped or it didn't help or it was a neutral thing. So you're saying
it doesn't matter.
More of a neutral. Yeah, like
it doesn't matter. So first of all, you're engaging in a bunch of what ifs and what abouts, and maybe it was useful. I don't give a fuck if it was useful. I give a fuck if it was true.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes, when you cast a wide net in these different ways of thinking, that's how you discover something new and intriguing and a new idea.
Okay, when you discover something new and intriguing that isn't the most pedestrian thing that I've dealt with every fucking weekend for 20 years, let me know.
All right. Yes, sir. I'm working on it. I appreciate you guys. I won't take up any more of your time.
There's nothing new or novel in maybes. If you were to actually demonstrate, hey, we found a very wonderful, useful, important aspect of religion. Cool. I would agree. I would say, hey, yeah, you found a wonderful, useful, important aspect of religion. But is the religious claim true? That's what I care about. And nothing you've said either demonstrates that it is true or that you have any good reason to think it's true or that you even give a crap if it's true. You are so desperate to find some way to make it something you can hang on to that you don't care if it's true. And that's what I find so frustrating because despite what you say, you're not dumb. This is not a problem. You have some baggage and you desperately want and need to hang on to religion for reasons that you can't justify and you can't show that it's true. And all I've asked over and over again is it true? And you not only don't seem to care, but don't seem to know of any way to show whether or not it's true. That's the part that boggles my mind.
I don't think anything that would be convincing to you, but
well, of course. Congratulations on the most common cop-out. The most common cop-out after being called out is that it wouldn't be convincing to me. Hang on. Why wouldn't it be convincing to me? Is it because I'm irrational or because you're irrational?
Probably because I'm irrational.
There you go. Why are you okay with being irrational?
I'll tell you why. I actually haven't answered that question. I thought about it. So why am I okay being irrational? Because I find myself in the exact same position that a lot of people that I admire, great men, not my father, let's say Johann Sebastian Bach, or let's say Sir Isaac Newton, a lot of great men who think that there's a sky daddy up there, and they don't have some existential crisis that they're Christian or that they believe in something that's wacky. And so why should I?
You said, sir, they didn't have a crisis because of something wacky.
To believe what Johann Sebastian Bach
Brandon, you said
Isaac Newton believed.
Yeah, Isaac Newton believes in alchemy, and they believe the mercury in his system contributed to his death.
And we have chemistry because of that.
No, because of alchemy. Because of alchemy?
We don't have chemistry because of
the precursor to
chemistry? He was the father of physics.
But I mean, wasn't alchemy the precursor to chemistry?
No.
Playing around with things does not chemistry make. The fact you might as well say that we have insulin because somebody tried other things first.
Thank God they did. I mean, thank God.
No, you dumbass. The other things didn't contribute to this. You don't get to take 20 failures and say that we couldn't get to the right answer without those 20 failures unless those 20 failures necessarily led in a causal foundation to that final success. Alchemy did not lead to the success and understanding of chemistry. But meanwhile, you're basically saying that because there were some other smart people who didn't have an existential crisis, which, by the way, how the fuck do you know they didn't?
True.
And second of all, what difference does it make if they didn't have an existential crisis? You know who doesn't have an existential crisis? People who don't fucking know or care if they're wrong.
It's not even an argument ad populum at this point. It's argument ad celebrity. I want to be in this specific club.
Well,
Why?
I'm in the club with a bunch of people who were smart about a few things and really stupid about one thing. So I'm going to join them in the thing that they were stupid about. Why not join them in the things they were smart about and set aside the stupid things? And then you can be better.
How do you distinguish which is which? How do you listen to the mass?
I just told you. I've been telling you. I've been telling you for 41 minutes and 50. I've been telling you for 41 minutes and 58 seconds. You need to care about the truth and use the best methods of finding the truth, but you don't.
Or else what? You might write St. Matthew's Passion by Bach, or else what?
Now
you might write some great concertos or some good religion.
I wonder how many of these fallacies you're going to run through before the thing's over. By the way, there are lots of very great...
I want to cry right now at how your brain has been consumed by something that does not care about truth, doesn't give a shit about how to find truth, doesn't have any interest in becoming better or being better. And you think because somebody wrote a beautiful piece of music that this somehow justifies believing irrational bullshit to the point where you won't even listen to people when they're telling you how to tell the difference. I'm sorry for what religion has done to you.
Real quick though, Brandon, have you heard the Broadway play musical Matilda? Have you heard the music track from that?
Perhaps, yeah. I like Into the Woods or Sweeney Todd, but I think I've heard Matilda.
Yeah. Do you recall that it's a very, very well put together Broadway musical? That it's very beautiful. It sounds incredible. Wait, how could you imagine? It was written by an atheist. Tim Minchin not only doesn't believe in God, he constantly makes fun of it. And yet it's one of the best soundtracks to ever come out of Broadway. But what do you mean you can imagine it was great? It was written by an atheist. Where did he get that inspiration?
I was not trying to say that atheists can't do great things.
We have the history we have. The religiously inspired music from the past exists, whether or not everybody leaves religion or not. All of that and all those foundations still exist. The future will still have great artists and great musicians, regardless whether or not those people adhere to it. You're basically pointing to the past and going, aren't you glad those things exist? As though if they didn't exist and other stuff existed instead, we wouldn't say, aren't you glad those? If you didn't have a son and instead you had a daughter because a different sperm made it to the egg, wouldn't you be glad she exists?
Yes.
Then this is a stupid point.
Well, okay. I maybe you're right. You guys are very
No, it's
sharp,
not maybe. That's definitely right.
Okay. Wrecked. Good job. You roasted me. I appreciate you guys, and I'll call in and listen in, and thank you for...
Just call with something better next time, bud. But I'm glad that you're not doing to your son what your father's doing to you.
Until you care about the truth, don't call in and waste my time, because that's what I care about. If you have beliefs and you don't care if they're true, don't waste my motherfucking time. Don't waste the audience's time. Don't waste anybody's time. I dropped it.
Okay.
If you I'm happy for people to call in and say, here's what I believe and why. And then if they say, and I don't care if it's true, cool. Thanks.
Right.
Whatever. I appreciate you got your 10 seconds or whatever on air. That was 40 minutes of a genuine conversation where at every single point, his questions were asked and answered about science, about epistemology, about how do you tell if something's truth, about, all this. And at every turn, it was, well, maybe I don't care about truth. Maybe this is just useful. Maybe this was important. Maybe this is what's got us out of this. Maybe I'm going to side with somebody who wrote something beautiful. Okay, fine. You don't give a shit about any of the things that you asked about. You are an absolutely 100% dishonest interlocutor when you ask questions and then get the answers that are correct and dismiss them because you prefer something else. I'm happy to hear what people believe and why. The why is the important part.
Yep.
If you believe that Jesus is the Son of God who came down and sacrificed himself to save you, and you believe that because it makes you feel good, congratulations. You have an unassailable belief that is not demonstrably true, that makes you irrational for accepting it. Rationality is not a feeling. Logic is not something we pulled out of our ass. Sound epistemology, to have good reasons for belief, is not just a fucking hunch. There needs to be a method. If you want to say, here's a phenomenon, and I think it's caused by this, you need to be able to demonstrate that what you're pointing to is a possible thing, that it possibly exists, that it plausibly exists, that it probably exists, and then show that it possibly, plausibly, and then probably has a causal connection. You can't explain things by pointing to mysteries. You can't say, I think it's magic. If your explanation for something boils down to it's magic, you have explained nothing. We explain things in terms of other things that we understand. We don't explain things in terms, you can't solve a mystery by appealing to a bigger mystery.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that'll end this call here. Amir in Birmingham, UK, him is a theist who says that God is a good explanation for anything that exists.
Hello,
and to think
hi,
otherwise
Jimmy and Matt.
is very ignorant. So, how can God, and which God, be an explanation for my glasses?
Okay, just want to say it's a pleasure to be back on the line, and thank you for having me on. I'm not debating for any specific religious God. This would be more of a generic creator.
Same as last time.
So
yeah,
here,
exactly.
So start off by listening. You said that God, the generic creator, is a good explanation for anything that exists, and to think otherwise is ignorant. That's what it has here from the call screener. So how does your generic creator serve as a good explanation for my eyeglasses?
For your eyeglasses?
Yes.
I'm sorry,
it says here, try listening very carefully. I'm being very specific. You said to the call screener that God is a good explanation for anything that exists, and to think otherwise is very ignorant. So how is your generic creator God a good explanation for my eyeglasses?
Yeah, God is a good explanation for why anything exists. So the reason why there is something rather than nothing is because God is a plausible explanation.
There's a word missing. There was a word missing for why anything exists, not for any individual thing. Okay, so now we understand that you're saying that God is a good explanation for why there's something rather than nothing. How could there possibly be nothing? And what is your justification for claiming that there needs to be an explanation for this?
So I'm committed to, let's say, the contingency argument. And that starts from the observation that everything we encounter in the world is contingent, meaning that it could have...
We already did this, Amir. Amir, you called him with the contingency argument
why
last
can't
time.
you answer the question that I'm fucking asking? How could there possibly be nothing?
How could there possibly be nothing? It's the fact that there is something that exists. I mean, to say, why is there possibly...
Has there ever been a moment? Has there ever been a moment where something didn't, where there was nothing, where there wasn't something?
No.
Okay. So then we don't need an explanation for why there's something rather than nothing, because something has always existed.
Sure. I mean, to paraphrase it.
Nope. Goodbye. I went through this with you last time. I'm not doing it again.
That's what I didn't get. Why would you call with the exact same argument? You got wrecked on contingency last time. It's one of the few calls I remember ever.
This is, I thought, because of the way it was framed from the call screener, I thought this was Amir saying that God is a good explanation for anything that exists. But what he's saying is God is a good explanation for why anything exists. But if, as you just admitted, something has always existed, then there needs to be no explanation. You don't need to explain why something always has been, because it could not have been any other way, and it was never any other way. Plus, as Eric pointed out, I already addressed that in order for there to be something that counts as an explanation for something, you have to show that it's a plausible, possible, probable, existent thing, and how it's an explanation for something. When you talk about the contingency of the universe and how there's always something, those two things are potentially in conflict, because if something has always existed, then it's not contingent. And if you're just going to agree with me that something has always existed, then the only road you have to go down is, well, that something is God. Yes, but that something is not God. Something is the cosmos. That is a thing that's always existed. We don't know that it's always existed, but since time began with Big Bang cosmology, there's not a time when this didn't exist. And your argument is going to be for a God that exists outside of time, which is a nonsensical position. And I'm just tired of it.
Can't act. Got to be in time to act, bro.
It's wild. Jared, theist in Oregon, pronouns are he, him, says, God busted me out of prison and drove the getaway car, and that's your proof of God. Right?
Yeah. Let me. Would you like to hear the story? Let me tell you the story.
If it's reasonably succinct, because so God, like, tell me this story, but try to keep it reasonably brief.
Okay. Well, I was 16. I got caught forging a $20 check. I was using phony ID. Actually, my name is Jerry. I was using phony ID. And I got sentenced to 5 years in the adult prison. I was 16 at the time. I was using an ID of a person that was 19. The description didn't match me at all. Went into the prison. Went through the initial 30-day, when they evaluate you. Then I somehow managed to get onto the work camp, which was that was a little bit less security. From there, I got singled out about 150 people, got singled out to be put onto a van where we went into a city about 40 miles away, and we worked there for the day. And out of that van load, I was selected to be one of the two people that went to a little ranger station. We were hammering together these pallets. Anyway, so I stayed about 2 weeks and then easily escaped from there. I was gone for 12 years before they caught me.
Okay. So it says here that God busted you out of prison and drove the getaway car. And then the story you just told me is that you wrote a hot check. You got 5 years in prison for it because of a fake ID.
On $20. So the story's already not true.
On $20. So I already don't believe this. But then you ended up with two people at a ranger station. And then you said you easily escaped from there. So you told the call screener that God busted you out of prison and drove the getaway car. Now that's really cool, because I'd love to know, A, how you got out of prison, and B, how you know it was God, and C, how God drove a getaway car. But when I asked you to tell the story and keep it succinct, you told me all the backstory, and then when it got to you escaping, I easily escaped. What the fuck's wrong with you, Jerry?
Well, what's wrong with you? Have you ever been in prison? Do you know the system at all?
I don't think you've been to prison, dude.
My question here has nothing to do with prison or anything else. My question here is, you told the call screener that God busted you out of prison and drove the getaway car. And when I asked you to tell me that story, you told me the story about how you went in prison, got all the way up to the moment you escaped, and then just said, I easily escaped. Why can't you tell the part of the story that's fucking relevant?
What part do you want? Do you want the easily escape part?
How did God?
Do you think
How
that was easy?
did God?
Do you think that was
How
easy?
did God?
Let me ask you.
How
How do you
did?
think? How easy
Let me
it is?
mute you. You asked me what part of the story I want. I want the part of the story that shows that God busted you out of prison and God drove the getaway car. I want the part of the story that you promised to fucking tell me. Are you going to tell me that part?
I can't tell it to you if you can't hear the details of it. If you're not going to listen to the details of it, there's no point to this call. You know, you're not going to listen to the details.
Jerry, I'm giving you your last opportunity. Tell me how God busted you out and drove the fucking getaway car right now.
God blinded the people that were supposed to be looking at everything. That the person whose name I used had a record about a mile long. He was about a foot taller than me. No description. They didn't look at the description. Just the blindness of everyone going through this entire system was unbelievable, all the way through to the end. So what happened was that God is blinding consciousness and just putting his thoughts into their heads. So that's how I escaped. It was practically a series of actually very unlikely occurrences that we're talking about. If you haven't been in the prison, if you've never escaped, then you could sit here and
Jerry, you've never been to prison, so I don't get like
Jerry.
Ooh.
I'm going to give you your absolute last chance. You said that God busted you out of prison and drove the getaway car. How did God drive the getaway car?
Okay, I was being kind of euphoric.
Goodbye, jackass. Goodbye, you lying jackass.
Oh.
You don't need to make up stories. You don't need to exaggerate to get on. All you had to do was tell the fucking truth. You're the shittiest storyteller of the week, Jerry. You couldn't tell a story if somebody else wrote it down for you and read it to you in your ear for you to quote to somebody else.
I used a fake ID and bounced a $20 check, and now I'm in prison. I don't know why Jordan Peterson's in prison, but now I'm in prison.
How did God bust you out? Well, he blinded the people. Wait, did he literally blind the people? No, he just had everybody seemingly be incompetent and ignore stuff. And so basically what you're saying is that you went through this scenario and then you decided that it was just too much incompetence on the part of the prison system and too easy for you to escape. So God must have done it, including driving the getaway car, which is the bullshit story you told to our call screener, you fucking liar.
And then he said euphoric instead of hyperbolic. Oh, man. Yeah, somebody said Peterson obviously went to prison for misgendering people. It's about, that story was about as true as Jordan Peterson's ability to interpret law.
Yeah. Absolutely awful storytelling.
Do you know what it's like in prison? I like that God blinded the people to get him out of prison for a crime he admitted he committed, but didn't blind the people who were checking the ID in the first place that got him thrown there. Seems like God could have cut out so much paperwork if he had just done it the first time.
Yeah. There's people, there are fine Christian people who are dying of cancer and babies in those Christian families who are dying of illnesses and disease. There are starving children around the world who God could help and does nothing for, but a guy who wrote a hot check and got a bullshit 5-year fucking sentence, God blinds people and drives a getaway car.
Yeah.
Pull the other one. Pull the other one.
Fucking Christ.
All right. Last call of the show. And then we'll get into super chats. Dave, who's been on hold for an hour and a half. I'm not going to give you a preamble. Dave, welcome to the show. What's your question?
Hey, so I'm in a lot of Facebook groups, like the theist versus atheist kind of thing.
Yep.
And like, I don't really get much in the way of like, I don't know. Everything seems simplistic. So basically my question is like, I'm arguing with theists and I'm showing them like, look, here's a chart of like the Krebs cycle. Here's a chart or like a bunch of math explaining string theory. You know, it's not based on nothing. I guess my question is like, I don't see any of that from the theist side. Like, is Craig, William Lane Craig, is he doing like any sort of math or whatever? Or is it just armchair philosophy, like just sort of philosophical masturbation kind of stuff.
There is no math to do.
Oh.
How do you do what math could you possibly do to demonstrate the supernatural?
I don't know. I guess I was.
Neither does anybody else. The supernatural is an untestable, unfalsifiable proposition. We currently have no way to demonstrate anything supernatural. So I'd be more upset. And Bill Craig's a smart guy. He's wrong about the God thing, but he's a smart guy. If you told me that Bill Craig was sitting around doing math to try to prove the supernatural, I'd think he was nuts. I'd have less respect for him. This is in the realm of philosophy because it isn't science. It isn't math. There's no way. The supernatural is untestable, unfalsifiable. Anybody who's sitting around trying to do math to prove God has a fundamental misunderstanding of both math and God.
Yeah, I think something nefarious that does happen, Dave, and maybe this is what you're seeing or wondering about, is there's a tendency from the people like you're describing to editorialize on scientific things and present it as though that editorializing is itself science. I think that was the thing that one of our earlier callers had a problem with, that this, I've thrown my op-ed on top of the science and that's still science. And I think that's the fucked up stuff that people fall for and go, but these theists are doing great science all the time.
Right. So there's no formal like system to like to prove any of the supernatural claims. There's it just seems like just like stories and artwork, and there's nothing really. There's no there. I guess is what I'm saying.
The people asking for proof of the supernatural are usually atheists, not theists. Like the James Randi Prize was the system in place to try and incentivize people to present truth, rather proof of the supernatural.
Right. So there's like no way of knowing other than, I don't know, the scientific ways. Okay. Sorry. I have an IQ of 87, so it's getting through life for me is difficult. But thanks for.
You're fine, Dave.
I don't think that's particularly relevant, and you're doing fine. It's just for people who are unfamiliar with the subjects, I get how it could be like, hey, what's going on here? You know, it's a very confusing thing because people are essentially making claims that it seems like, boy, it'd be really cool if there was some way to test this. But unfortunately, there isn't. And you're not the first person today that I've talked to who is trying to sort out, okay, is there any good reason to think that any of the time spent on any of this is useful? Like, hey, let's see if we can't sort out reality. And it's like when we were talking about what the Discovery Institute was doing. They're not doing science. They have a mission and they're engaged in some propaganda, and that's about it.
Okay, cool. All right. Thank you very much, you guys.
Cool.
Thanks a lot for holding on to it for as long as you did. I feel bad that that's all there was. Like, if you needed an answer to another question, now's the time to get it in because you waited forever.
I do have a joke. You said to the.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I was looking for the there, and there's nothing there. So I guess I'm done.
You know what's funny is my joke kind of is a commentary on what you're saying. You said to the screener, has any formal systematic work been done to describe the nature of the supernatural? However, wouldn't the more accurate phrase be done to describe the supernature of the supernatural? Because anyway, that was the whole joke. You said nature of supernatural. I thought it was funny.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah. Supernature.
Yeah.
The commentary there being that
my life.
If something is supernatural, how would you, if you could explain something's nature, it would be natural. You can't explain the nature of the supernatural.
Yeah, it would have been better to say the ontology of the supernatural, but also we don't know that, we don't have an answer to that either.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, keep doing what you're doing, because Matt, I've been listening to you for 10 years, and you've fixed a lot of my brain. And Jimmy, go fuck yourself, man.
Word. You know I will.
Repeatedly.
See you, Dave.
All right, thanks.
We talked to two Daves and had another Dave call in that was one of the people who dropped earlier. There was a lot of Daves today.
Dave's not here.
Not here, man. Had this show happened a year and 2 months ago, it would have been produced by a Dave. And there would have been another Dave on top of it all.
Yeah. I gotta, that's the last caller, by the way. We're going to get to super chats here in a second. It's an incredibly weird situation that I keep finding myself in, where I repeatedly point, you think that you're engaged with someone who cares about the truth. And then you find out it's almost refreshing a little bit when the person who seems like they don't care about the truth, even though they kind of give lip service to it, kind of breaks down and acknowledges, hey, maybe I don't care about the truth. But it's a very short-lived kind of satisfaction, because then you have, genuinely, my heart hurts for someone who's so desperate to make sense of religion, to make it seem like it works or is something good, or can't we find a way to make it useful because this was important to somebody. It is devastating to watch people who don't care about the truth acknowledge that and kind of come to grips with that. I wish I could understand it better, but I can't. And I've come up with a bunch of different examples. Hey, don't you care? When you're crossing the street.
Yeah,
and they don't.
It's hard to tell who genuinely doesn't and who doesn't want to cede the point. Do you know what I mean? Because there's definitely a huge group of people who there's just that ego. And look, I get it too, just not to that degree. I would never say something so stupid, but there is somehow a different level for a lot of people of, I'm willing to basically admit I like being wrong if it means that I don't actually admit to being wrong in the argument that I'm in that argument. If I can maintain my pride, it's just sad.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. But as the great poet said, I had swallowed my pride. I had choked on the ride. I can't remember the next words, but those are two good sentences. More funny, but yeah.
I think it was choked on the rind.
Yeah, that makes more sense. I had swallowed my pride. I had choked on the rind. Yeah. Yep, I've never known that correctly.
Would make me empty inside.
Who's saying that? Wasn't Smash Mouth, right?
No. Beautiful Pavilion. I don't know.
Goo Goo Dolls. Someone will tell us in chat.
Eve 6, Inside Out.
Good enough.
Sweet. $20 from Douglas. Pete, Jimmy, I'd love to see a regular show that focuses on psychology of religion. Well, fortunately, that's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, Shannon Q obviously covers actual psychology a lot. If you're talking about somebody who specializes in that, we'd have to find the right person. And then when you say regular, what does regular actually mean? But there are a lot of shows I would like to see and do in the future. And a lot of them are going to depend. And to some degree, I almost think at some point we have to come up with, I have to do some analysis and stuff. But there are certain ideas that I've liked and I've even mentioned before that we can't afford to do, because we can't afford to have several projects that don't pay for themselves. We have to limit the number of those we do. We just have to. And one of those ones, based on other things we have done in other times, unfortunately, a show that is an all-women show always isn't popular. And that also is a problem with the atheist community. And part of me wants to go, fuck it, let's do it anyway, because Patreon is there. And so that's another reason. Yeah, we'll probably have
the atheist community's done it for the longest time. I mean, my ex-wife started it. My ex-wife created Godless Bitches as a program, as a podcast for the atheist community of Austin. It primarily focused on women's issues, abortion, things like that. And it was supposed to be, and was fairly consistently, run by, managed by, starring women.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, I know most of you don't realize this. In the atheist community, and while we're getting better at it, how women are treated is dramatically different from how men are treated.
Yeah.
I remember Aron and I were sitting around, and there was a woman who I won't name because she's fucking awful, but it was like one of our first times meeting her, and she came up to Aron and I, and we were sitting there, and she was starting to become a popular YouTuber, and she was telling us about the messages that she gets and how there were rape threats and death threats just all the time. And she's like, but you guys know, because we were far more popular than she was at the time. And she's like, you guys know. And I was like, no, I've never had a rape threat, and I don't really get too much in the way of death threats. A couple every few years or whatever from sensationalized stuff. And, Aron was responding basically the same way. And then, I saw the messages that my ex-wife would get. I saw the emails that come in. I see the messages that come in for Shannon, for Arden, for anybody who's in this space. There's a misogynistic tone that has not left the atheist community. It exists in the broader community. It's not just atheists. I'm just pointing out that atheists aren't immune to it either.
And there's a tragedy in there that is, this is why I like to promote as often as I can the Stacy's Mom podcast, because there you have a mother-daughter deconstruction podcast. They also bring on other like usually duos that are family. They talk about great stuff, but I was several years into my deconstruction as a Mormon. Like, it might have even really happened after I started the channel. In fact, I think it did. A good number of years before I even found out really how different the ex-Mormon, not even just ex-Mormon, but Mormon experience was for women, that it was so much further different than what I had understood. And so there are unique things, unique challenges that face women that generally aren't going to face men that are deconstructing, and vice versa. But right now in the atheist community, the men's experience is sort of the default one a lot of the time. And that's why I think a lot of women don't see themselves represented in a lot of the atheist community, and may not then be as incentivized to participate, which is something we're trying to do and trying to change. And it's not just women. There's lots of groups that we would like to platform more of. And there's an actual difficulty. There are people I've reached out to who are like black trans atheists. And it's like, do you want to do this call-in show? And they're like, Jimmy, you don't understand. The eyes on me on your call-in show, even if only a couple hundred people watched, is not the same eyes you get. I will the things that will happen after, the way I am scrutinized, the way, because I am a unique symbol, I also have to get everything right, and a call-in format isn't necessarily conducive to something I might need to put more thought in. The way that I am scrutinized both outside and inside because I'm considered a spokesperson of a group and there aren't many of us. So the whole thing sucks. Like it really does. And so we're trying to do our best to bring the people we think you should know.
Yeah, I've tried. I'm not going to, I'm no saint. But I've tried to make improvements on occasion. And I remember, when I was doing the tour stuff with Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and others, one of the deals that I made with the guy that was managing the tour is, okay, but I want to also do events with people who I think should be listened to more, who aren't being listened to. And so, I managed to do events with Tracy Harris and Sarah Hayter and stuff like that to get more women, more people of color involved. And it didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, it sucks. I do like, I like that we have been able to pull off an all trans hosted, and often, tomorrow will be an exception, but often trans even produced show. That's been cool. Yeah, we're doing our best. I am a saint, but not necessarily for this specifically. Anyway, send super chats if you have more questions about these two cis white dudes' opinions on oppressed minorities. Send us. We could sell you a t-shirt about it too, if you like.
Yeah.
From Amit Tawari, hello. I don't know what the currency is or what that translates to, so I added it in just in case. Oh, it's from India, so that's got to be rupees, I suppose. Hello, Matt and Jimmy, fellow atheists from India. Lots of love. Keep up the good work. Hello to all lovely people here. Amit, I hope that you are in one of the parts of India that being an atheist is not so bad, because I've got some friends there that it is not going great for right now, including some who have ended up in prison, presumably, seemingly because of it.
Yep. 1999 from Greg Markowski. I did go see the Band of Heathens last week. They were pretty good, pretty tight ensemble work, bit of a throwback. Thanks, CCR. See them if they come close to you. Thanks, Greg.
Sky Highlander 2. There should have been only one. Go Jimmy yourself. Yes. And love to Matt.
Fair points, Guy. Well played.
I want to pretend I liked Skylander 2, but in truth, I haven't seen either of them.
20 from GB. Hey guys, question about atheism, the null. Is it possible to also put atheism as the alt hypothesis? Can lack of belief faith be a conclusion based on an alt hypothesis making theist be the null? So the null hypothesis, it tends to be used with regard to statistics, saying there's no connection between X and Y. I use it to sort of establish what the default position should be on anything. And so the default position would be there's no connection between God and existence. One key thing about the null hypothesis is that it can never be proven. It can only be disproven. That's the power of the null hypothesis. And so I don't know how you could put atheism as a null hypothesis because you couldn't prove it.
Right. You'd have to invoke presuppositionalism. Which they do. In a way, GB, if I think I understand your question right, this is what Cy Brun does. Cy Brent? What, I don't know how you say his name.
Cy Ten Bruggencate. This to my knowledge, this is nothing at all in the ballpark of anything Cy Ten Bruggencate's ever done. But all he's ever done is cribbed Greg Bonson and stuff. But I don't. So based on an alt hypothesis, make theist be the null.
I'm thinking of the wrong guy then. Who's the guy? Who was the precept you debated?
Cy Ten Bruggencate.
Yeah, so I'm sort of saying that transitioning the wording to where you just default there and now everyone has to work against you. that you couldn't do this, making theist be the null without invoking presuppositionalism. And I'm saying then what you would exposit from there sounds to me a lot like what Sci-10 does.
Well, he doesn't do anything anymore, but that doesn't sound at all to me like what he does. That's not a null hypothesis. So presuppositionalism is to presuppose God as the necessary foundation for logic, for morality, whatever you're doing there. This is about, from an epistemological standpoint, what's the default position? And the default position is atheism. That's the null hypothesis. It can never be proven. It can only be disproven by demonstrating that God exists. I don't know how you could switch that to make theism the null, because that would mean that you would need to, that theism couldn't be proven, because a null hypothesis can't be proven. It can only be disproven. And so if theism is the null, you're basically saying they couldn't ever demonstrate a God. That's the problem. Null hypothesis is unprovable.
Yeah.
And so if you say theism was the null, then you're saying theism is unprovable. But theism is provable by demonstrating a God. Now, whether or not they can actually do it is separate. This is talking about provable in principle.
I'm just going to move to the next, because there's something in my brain that's not hearing what you're saying as excluding what I'm thinking about Sci-10. And I'm trying to figure out what the words
you're
are.
Thinking. It's probably just the way we're phrasing it that's making it confusing.
Yeah. I think it is. From Sheridan Bernasconi, Massachusetts, Maine, and parts of Canada will be hit by Hurricane Lee. Sending thoughts to our fellow humans who live in those areas. Love the show, I think is what it meant to say. Matt, and go fuck yourself, Jimmy. Is it going to still be a hurricane by then? Or I know that there was a pressure system that was supposed to really slow it or cool it off and hopefully take a ton of energy out of it. What's it looking like?
I think Shannon said she was gearing up for a hurricane fun party with drinks and everything else. So I'm not sure how threatening it is at this moment, but
it looks like it's going to be, from what I'm seeing, just skimming, that when it hits, it'll be one and then almost immediately a tropical storm, which, look, no amount is good and all of it causes storm surge. So that does suck. However, I doubt there will be a single casualty from this, but somebody's going to, there's going to be property damage and shit that sucks. Yeah, anyway. It never ceases to amaze me. The live chat has been fucking whacked today. I don't know if you've been glimpsing it at all, but the mods have had their work cut out, and I don't get that. Like, at this moment in the chat, what was the point of saying something transphobic? We're not talking about trans issues. The trans show is tomorrow. Maybe you're on a delay and you were hearing me promote the we have like the sharpest mods on YouTube. You're going to get taken down quick, and it's not going to be a warning. You're just going to be ejected into space. In fact, most people probably didn't even know you said it, except that I brought it up to make a broader point. In a way, I shouldn't have. Anyway, this one's yours.
Yeah, and it's going to be irritating because my first thing. So here we go. $20 from Matthew Hydra. Hey, Matt, which chapter of Guy P. Harrison's book did you find problematic and why? And Jimmy, would you ever consider getting Destiny as a co-host? Thank you. Go, Jimmy, yourself. I was like, you expect me to remember what chapter of a book I had a problem with 15 years ago? But I thought I was going to be able to answer it because I had Guy's 50 Reasons up here the other day, but it has since made its way back downstairs. We talked about on an episode of the Nonprofits. But in short, there was a chapter where he told a story of having a bicycle accident and coming to with people praying over him and how he was grateful for that. And I asked him if he'd feel the same way if they'd been sacrificing chickens. Other than that, you'd have to go back and listen to the podcast that we did all those years ago where I talked about what I disagreed with and why. But Guy might remember. I'll reach out to Guy because I wouldn't mind getting him on the show as well. And we talk fairly infrequently, but we've at least maintained Facebook friends and message each other every now and then. So,
for
Jimmy,
my part,
Destiny.
I don't consume YouTube. I don't consume TikTok. I don't consume Twitch. I know very little about Destiny, and I don't even know if the things I think I know about them. For example, Matt, you've debated Destiny, correct?
Kinda.
I was only pretty sure that it happened. Okay, so I do believe that there might be a couple. Well, okay, let me just say, I think there may be specific philosophical differences that would make that unlikely. However, one, I could be wrong. And two, I just simply don't know enough about him. There are people that are, I don't shy away from having controversial people and even people that we have some disagreements on, but there are certainly lines I would have to find out if he breaks those lines. But Vosh is considered very controversial. We had him back on the election show. He's a guy I like, and we probably have him back again. So
Vosh has got some problematic positions, which I think he may have retracted or something. He had some issues about kink at Pride and whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know enough about. I don't know enough about Destiny and all of his views. He and I have had one conversation that was a kind of a little miniature debate that was supposed to be about the bodily autonomy argument for evolution, the bodily autonomy argument for abortion, and what ended up happening is that he essentially agreed with my position, but didn't think it was strategically useful. And I'm like, okay, I don't care.
If what chatters are saying is true, that he is anti-choice, I would say that is a line beyond what we would platform as a co-host. Whether that's a line beyond what we would platform for a debate, maybe.
I did not get the impression that he was anti-choice at all, which was weird because we were debating abortion, but we were debating the bodily autonomy argument, which he thinks is the worst argument, but he thinks it for strategic reasons. That's what I took out of there.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I don't know enough about his other positions. So
yeah, word.
But I'll tell you what, even if Destiny was great and was interested, not to be quota filling, but getting another cishet white guy, or I actually, that whether or not he's het, I don't know. But
I don't know any of those things.
Another guy that looks or feels too much like me or Jimmy, and half the other people around here.
Not a priority.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, I'm just going to move on. I look, don't bother just writing what you think Destiny in the chat. Like somebody had said, what was it? I just saw it. Well, defending Rittenhouse. That wouldn't be something that I would say cuts me off. I think it's wrong, but I understand why people have the mistaken view about Rittenhouse.
And since he did get a not guilty verdict.
Yeah, they can at least
consistent with the law.
They can claim some vindication from that. $20 from Erica Marika. Thank you. That's a cool name.
So Eric said he's non-binary and bi. So yeah, that's why. See, I don't know enough.
Yeah.
So let me stop putting people in categories when I don't know them. $10 from Mike B. Brothers and sisters, please reach into your pockets and give. I say give to the line. This our hallowed community of atheist rebel scum. I don't know where I was going with this. There you go. I think you wanted that read with a little gravitas, so I threw a little in.
I liked it a lot. Get Stanfield says, love the show and conversations. Please take my money. I'm going to just go out on a limb and guess that you do not live in the UK. Not just because you paid in American dollars, but I don't imagine that the name Git would be enjoyable there.
That's fair.
Yeah, if it makes you feel any better, I'm not going to share what it is, but my actual legal last name is also a British insult. So, and my family is from England. I don't know how they did it. My last name's Bollocks. Jimmy Bollocks. That's what I've been hiding from all of you. Is this me?
Sure.
$8.99 New Zealand from Lemon Peel Angelfish. Much love, Matt and Jimmy, and thank you to the awesome mods and crew.
We're still going to, I don't know how many of these super chats they are, but even after saying we weren't going to run long, we're still going to hit 9 o'clock, which is like fucking 3 hours.
Yeah. But we had at least 4 theists. Worth it.
Yeah. We had really good theistic calls, which is what I said we'd run long for. $50 from Bill Bomarito. Sorry. Bomataro. $50 from Bill Bomarito. Thank you for teaching me how to push back in my world full of theists. I love you guys so much. Thank you, Bill.
People guessing the names. Jimmy Wenker, Jimmy Todger. It's one you
Jimmy
would never
Blimey.
guess because it's a very obscure one.
Well, now they'll guess it.
No, they seriously won't. And my name isn't spelled the way the insult is named, just pronounced. Mr. Coffee says, Matt and Jimmy, thanks for all the shows over the years. And thanks all those behind the scenes that make it possible.
Amen.
That's true. Yep.
I mean, anybody who loves or hates the frustration that I experience doing these shows, it would not happen if not for all the work that Jimmy and Arden do behind the scenes, our call screeners do behind the scenes, the moderators. There's a lot more that goes into this, and I'm just the lazy bastard that shows up and talks and acts like he knows shit.
These are all really funny. Sorry, watching the chat. Is it Jimmy Nonce? that one's my favorite one. Yes. Thank you, by the way, to Double E, who was today's call screener. And then we also, I know I got cookies and I killed Earl. And now I'm seeing Stephanie in there. And Eric is here. I don't think Eric's modding. But Eric is present.
Let's not praise Eric. He's just another dude.
I think everybody here just likes him. He's just a nice guy.
How do you not? I constantly, every time I don't have a guest for Wednesday, I'm like, I should just see if Eric wants to come back on again. But I don't.
Grossly likable.
Yeah.
Let's
jealous. Stop talking about him. He's just going to get a big head and
send us money and we'll do more.
$20 from Bones Elfkin to Jimmy DeBush. This is for shows which we love going over. Bother you guys. Go fuck yourselves. Oh, both of you guys go fuck yourselves.
We decided the other night after the pube thing that my mob name would be Jimmy DeBush.
Jimmy DeBush.
When Jimmy DeBush came to town. Eddie Dean says, what do you think about Christian scholars, historians that can admit the flaws, contradictions, and even say Jesus was wrong, yet choose to hold a personal faith? Would you call them irrational? Yes, irrational. Yes. For sure. But I'd feel bad.
Which evidently isn't a problem for some of them.
Yeah. Matt and I have a friend. I can text it to him if he doesn't remember, but have a friend who's kind of in this position that I can't fathom how they're still in any way Christian, but I love this person very much and sort of feel bad that whatever the circumstances makes them still find themselves in that position.
What they don't know is that your name's Jimmy.
That's right. Jimmy hat. I'm a condom.
$10 from Robin Webster. Matt, hoping you destroy Daniel. Can't wait to see it. Jimmy, I was Patreon, added channel membership. Can I cancel Patreon and still access Zooms?
No. Right now, the only benefit to being a channel member is speed chat. So any benefit that's on Patreon is independent. And to tell you the truth, while you might like the speed feature more, we prefer you be a patron over being a channel member. But we understand some people want to pay for the bypassing of slow mode. And so that's the only reason it's really there. And the reason is YouTube takes so fucking much of it. It's at least 35%. It might be more. I think it's 45 of, whereas we only have to pay kind of more standard fees. I think we lose by the end of it. The math ends up being like 11% of Patreon pledges. And that goes to pay a lot of fucking bills. Let me tell you that much right now. $10 from Garcia Buckner P. Regius. I don't know what this means.
I know what it means. It's Python Regius is ball python. And since I keep and breed them and have oodles and gobs in them, we just cut 5 new eggs today. Python Regius is the Latin serious name, which technically would be king python. They're called ball pythons because of their behavior to ball up,
right,
to protect themselves.
I love a ball python. You love many ball pythons.
I got loads of them. I was so happy when we cut the egg and we we saw we were looking at it and we were like, is that a Sterling? Is that a Sterling? And then we got one that was like, that's a Sterling. I'll see if I can't pull up a picture here in a minute, but $10 for GB, like continuum hypotheses of infinite set theory, whose conclusion is proven to be unprovably true and false. Atheists can use that conclusion to hypothesize that it is unprovable, making faith show otherwise. Whose conclusion is proven to be unprovably true and false? Well, that can't be.
By continuum observations.
Atheists can use that conclusion to hypothesize that it's unprovable, making faith show otherwise. I'm trying. Maybe it's because I'm tired. I have no clue what the hell you're talking about.
It's probably some quantum physics shit.
Yeah. I got nothing.
I made an exception to this one because Brandon thought, seeing the other chats, Brandon thought there was a period of time where you could just send $5. On Wednesday night, it's always $10 and up is what we cover, just for the sake of sort of shortening the shows that usually are going on. $5 from Brandon Campbell, though. Any creator recommendations for new atheists? Love the line, Aron Ra, Forrest. Who to stay away from, in your opinion? I'm not going to offer... I'm not going to start drama, even though I could answer that question.
Oh, I could give you a list of who you absolutely should avoid or stay away from, but that's not my job. I get accused of that a lot. I got accused of blacklisting some jackasses that, I mean, we know some people who are lying frauds. We know some people who are ableist pieces of shit.
Yeah.
We know some people who aren't particularly reasonable or skeptic or behind the scenes are awful or whatever. Hey, there's one I'll do. No, I
won't. Stefan Molyneux, stay the fuck away. I believe he's an atheist. I don't know. I responded. I remember I designated him the worst atheist to ever exist a couple of years ago.
Something like that. I don't really know. Sorry, Brandon. We're not here to spill the tea on anybody and everybody.
But recommendation wise, I'm just going to read off the names of people here at the line. One that I would get subscribed to very quickly would be Family Dr. Ben. And he also does a ton of content when he has the availability, because he is also a working doctor. Shannon Q is incredible. Paula Gia, as I've said earlier, perhaps has the best anti-apologetics dedicated YouTube channel on, I think, YouTube. Aron is also very good. Aron has a sort of wider. Oh, you already said Aron too. You said Aron and Forrest. So who else works here? Arden doesn't really have a channel, or rather Arden does most of her YouTube stuff through here. However, Arden and Matt do, if you like snakes, have Exotic Loot Slayer. John Gleason is the Godless Engineer, especially if you are...
Epic Loot Exotics, not Exotic Loot Slayer.
Sorry, Exotic Slayer is my favorite YouTube channel, and I just mixed you into him. He all he does is feed tarantulas, and it's the best. He has hundreds of them, and it's just putting a cockroach in. That's all the videos are. It's just feeding tarantulas, sometimes other bugs and animals, but I watch the tarantula videos. And that mistake I just made will happen again, because I didn't realize this was a problem until this moment. Erica, Gutsit Gibbon, highly recommend. That's for more biology content. God, man, I'm so bad at remembering lists of people. Katy Montgomerie and her Turf Wars series is amazing. If you like content replying to terrible people who are terrible to trans people, transphobic bullshit. Who have I forgotten that? And then obviously everybody, if you see videos here with that are still live in the catalog of guests, there's a pretty good chance that we would also recommend them too. I don't think we have any live shows with people we'd worked with in the past that we no longer stand by. Owen Morgan is great, especially if you're into ex-Jehovah's Witness stuff. Prophet of Zod is phenomenal as well. Mendice is great. Yeah, lots of recommendations in the live chat if you want to check it out. But
Keep reading for a second.
I shall. This one will
I'm
be
looking for something.
$10 from Entangled Loam, longtime lurker, first time super chatter. Glad your program exists. Love seeing two cis white dudes acting as the voice for those of us who coming out publicly is untenable. Go fuck yourself, Jimmy, and Matt, you're wrong.
Well, that's fair. I'm going to do a quick transition here because for anybody who wanted to see it, that is the new updated official Epic Loot Exotics logo, which you'll start seeing everywhere, replacing the other one. And yes, it was partially AI generated and then modified by myself and Arden. And so we wanted something that had a certain feel, but that was still recognizable, and something that I could reduce down to just like a black and white image that was still recognizable there. So that's Epic Loot Exotics. And now, while Jimmy's reading stuff, I'm going to see if I can find a picture of that, the Sterling.
The aspect ratio you have for the square makes this look like the cover to an Imagine Dragons album.
Yes.
Very much.
I'm going to keep that format.
BW Dingus says, my last name is Dingus. You guys are great. Jimmy. Mine too. I'm actually Jimmy Dingus. BW, we're siblings. You and me. So put me in your will. S1 Diamond says, hey guys. Was wondering if you saw the alien that was discovered and shown to the world today. Just wanting your guys' thoughts because it was so weird. Go give yourself an RKO, Jimmy. I think I brought it up at the beginning. If you're saying there's a new one today, because the one I saw was either yesterday or the day before. Let's have a look. Yeah, the one I said looks like it's made of cake. Matt says it looks like it's made of paper mache. Why does the alien look like the alien? Why would you expect if a real alien visited Earth that it would look so much like the aliens invented in the earlier 20th century science fiction? Why? How did they get it so right? That's my first question. But what do I think of it? Not much. It has Gumby's body.
I put the picture up. That is the Sterling ball python that is still in the egg, or was still in the egg earlier. It is a mix of two genes, pastel and cinnamon, but it has two copies of pastel. So it's a super pastel, or it's homozygous for pastel, and then heterozygous for cinnamon. And if you saw, at some point, we'll go through and we'll show the parents of this snake on Epic Loot Exotics and show, when you mix this snake with this snake, here are the different options that you can get out of it, just to show off. But yeah, that's a Sterling. Sterlings are varied. They're usually kind of steel gray. They can have more or less pattern. This one is almost patternless and kind of white. It's I can't wait till it gets out of the egg and I can get good pictures of it, because it's one of the coolest looking Sterlings I've seen.
I forgot to say Dave Warnock, but he also, the line is Dave Warnock's main content home too. Yeah. So you're already here.
I am ready for the next one. How many more of these we got?
50,000. We got one more.
One more. I'm ready when you are. 10 pounds from Found a Marble. Joaquin Phoenix's real surname is Bottom.
Joaquin Bottom.
Joaquin.
Try and say that 10 times fast.
Joaquin Bottom. Is that a homophonetic joke that I'm not getting?
I gave the benefit of the doubt that they're completely serious and that he changed his name for Hollywood, but now I'll look it up. Walking Bottom, I get what you're saying, that it could be. No, yeah, that's his real name.
Sweet. Well, you say real name. That raises a potential problem that maybe we'll talk about on another episode some other day, which is what is a real name and what difference does a real name make? Because I know plenty of people whose name that they use all the time does not match what's on their birth certificate.
Sure.
Some of them, like for example, several people that you're going to know in the atheist community who do content. They do content under a pseudonym. But I also know other people who've legally changed their name. And then some people who still go by one name, Oprah, Teller, from Penn and Teller. Penn doesn't go by one name, but it's one of those things that's prompted a lot of thought on my part, because when people talk about your real name or the name on your birth certificate, it also leads to things like your real gender, your gender on your birth certificate, the gender you were assigned at birth. And the difference between changing the name of how you'd like to be called or referred, or what represents you better, but also, is there a view of that it is corrective, that somebody else got to decide a label for you, but if it's truly you, shouldn't you be the one that gets to decide what that label is? I get to do my content under whatever name I want. I've been using the name that's on my birth certificate. Why the fuck would anybody call themselves Dillahunty as a pseudonym? I can't imagine why.
Well, now
and
they would. You made it famous.
Yeah. I kind of doubt that, but this thing about autonomy is a key aspect, and you'll hear more about this probably on Saturday, is a key aspect of secular humanism, that we are the masters of our own destiny, the steerers of our own ship, but not fully, because we can't control nature. We can't control fully physics and things like that. But to say that I get to decide how I live my life is important. It's the foundation of liberty and freedom. It's the cornerstone of secular humanism. It is what makes sure that individuals who don't fit into other people's handy-dandy little boxes still have respect, dignity, and the right to life. And as long as I'm able to choose what I want to do, then you guys know that I chose to be here on Wednesday night. I chose to be here with Jimmy. I chose to be here with the people who tuned in. And I plan to keep doing that right up until it's no longer who I want to be. And so I'm grateful that you guys also used your autonomy to choose to call in, to choose to interact, to choose to donate money. And that goes in, including and perhaps especially with the callers that I get the most frustrated with. It's because I want the world to be a better place, and I want for us to care about the truth. And one of the critical aspects of this is to recognize that when we care about the truth and the freedom that we have, all of a sudden trying to appease your father, trying to look for a way to soften the world, to make it feel like it cares more about you, all of the reasons for that go by the wayside. And that's when you find who truly cares and who doesn't, what the world's really like, and not just what you'd prefer it to be like. And in my view, although I may not be able to demonstrate it, that's the path to living your best life. Thanks everybody for tuning in and helping us live our best lives on Wednesday. Tune in tomorrow for the Transatlantic Call-In Show, and Jimmy and I'll be back on Sunday probably.
I'm Jimmy Tosser. That's not it either, but it's a good one.
There's a Blackadder quote I would use, but it would give it away.